Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Friday, everybody. Another week of the offseason is just about behind us. We are now 1 week closer to Notre Dame kicking off against Wisconsin for the 2026 football season. Still a ways to go, which means we have plenty of time for a Friday free-for-all mailbag today, Brian. Now, so far, like every week in the offseason, there was more breaking news last night pertaining to Notre Dame. We're going to kind of address that to kind of start the show. Some mailbag questions about it. We'll bring those up during that segment too. But Notre Dame's linebacker coach, who was their defensive line coach, Al Washington, is now headed to the NFL to rejoin forces with Jeff Hafley at the Miami Dolphins. So that move was announced and made public last night. And just more news for the Notre Dame offseason, Brian.
It is. And there's a lot of questions about it, and we'll bring some of them up. But obviously this is a loss for Notre Dame, and I just want to first of all implore Notre Dame fans to not everything is a conspiracy. Not everything is like, well, they did this to do this, to do this, to do this. You know, like how long did they know that Mike Mickens was leaving? Well, considering that the head coach for the team he left for got hired 3 days before he left, probably not long. You know what I mean? Like, not everything's a conspiracy. I'll explain kind of how all this kind of stuff went down. But also, we don't have to, there's a portion of the fan base that just likes to kind of bash everybody that leaves the program. And there's another portion of the fan base that just likes to woe is us every time something happens. When you lose coaches like Mike Mickens and now Washington, it's a loss to varying degrees for different types of impact, but it's a loss. And it's okay to say, this is a loss, and it's going to be tough for Marcus Freeman to replace them. But at the same time, we can also say, but when you're a program like Notre Dame and your school supporting the way that you are and your talent is the way that it is, it's a coveted job, and it increases the odds that Marcus Freeman is going to be able to replace him. I want to also say Notre Dame's already replaced Al Washington for the job he did at Notre Dame. That's Charlie Partridge. Basically, what they're still trying to do is replace Max Bulla. That's basically what Notre Dame is going to have to do because Al Washington already moved the linebackers. But I just want to say this, kind of like what we did with Mike Mickens. I think this is obviously a blow for Notre Dame. I think Al Washington did a very good job at Notre Dame. I think he got better and better and better as his time went on at Notre Dame, got better on the recruiting trail. And I don't think he gets enough credit, Trevin. I know you've written a couple articles on this. I don't think Al Washington gets enough credit for the job he did the last 2 seasons. When you consider you had, by the end of game 5 last year, 5 of 16 in the 24 season, you had lost your starting, basically, boundary line end. You had lost your backup boundary end. By the 5th game, your returning All-American nose tackle was banged up and would never be healthy the rest of the year, did miss some time. And in the first-round playoff game, you also then lost your All-American defensive tackle. You had Gabriel Rubio missing time because of an injury. And despite that, he got a room of backups, and that was made up a lot of converted linebackers like Josh Burnham and Junior Telemaka to go out there and play well enough to beat Georgia and Penn State without all those players we talked about. This year, Notre Dame comes out. They were much healthier this year, but still had some guys that they missed. They go out and they lead the nation in pressures. They hold opponents to less than 100 yards rushing per game. And the pressures were a big reason why Notre Dame was a top 10 team when it came to forcing turnovers. To watch the evolution of the defensive line in recent years has been truly a joy and a pleasure to watch from a coach who I was very critical of his first year at Notre Dame on the recruiting trail and the job he did, I felt he did with the defensive line in 2022. So to see the evolution of him becoming what he became has been quite a joy. And to see his evolution of him getting more comfortable at Notre Dame and understanding what it was like to recruit at Notre Dame and to coach the type of players they did at Notre Dame. Was he perfect? I don't have to defend that all the time. Nobody's perfect. We can just assume that. Mike Mickens wasn't perfect. Marcus Freeman's not perfect. Mike Denbrock's not perfect. But he worked his tail off, and he did a very good job, building the room that we are now talking about is a key to this team being arguably the most talented team in college football. He played a pretty big role in that, in the portal, and then also, obviously, even more importantly, in high school recruiting and development. Now it's up to Charlie Partridge to take it to that next step, and that's what we want to see. Al Washington brought it from just kind of a mediocre situation for a long time to a pretty darn good situation, and now it's up to Charlie Partridge to take it over the top and make it a truly elite unit. And I want to commend Coach Washington for the job he did over the last 4 years for Notre Dame, represented Notre Dame well, and he'll be missed. Does that mean that he's irreplaceable? Nobody's irreplaceable, but he'll be missed, and it's up to Marcus Freeman to make sure that the staff gets put together. Because the crazy thing is, Trev, the entire defensive staff from 2024 is gone. The only person that's actually left is what? Nick Sebastian, and then they're bringing Trey Reeder back. That's it. But I think Trey Reeder was he a player in 2024 still? I think he might have still been a player in 2024. So when we look at the growth we've seen from Al Washington the last 4 years, Trev, I don't think he gets enough credit for what he did especially the last 2 years, developing All-Americans. He developed Howard Cross and Riley Mills and All-Americans, and just building a defensive line that was able to show the production that they did the last 2 seasons.
Agreed. I mean, I've talked about it a lot this offseason. I think that Notre Dame's defensive line was one of, if not the most underrated. Appreciate you, Wade. I am, but I appreciate you. I really do. But look, Brian has talked ad nauseum about how we believe that Notre Dame's defensive line was one of the most underrated units in the entire country in 2025. And I'd be willing to bet that they're going to be a unit that doesn't generate a whole lot of buzz going into 2026 either, because they don't have the big name of a Damon Wilson or, Ruben Bain from Miami going into the 2025 season for now. But I think that narrative is going to quickly change, I would think. But we've seen media outlets do a bunch of different things. But who is to credit for that? It's Al Washington. He brought in these guys. He developed some of these players. He took Notre Dame's defensive line unit from a top 25 unit to a top 10 unit. Now it's time for Charlie Partridge to step in and take it from a top 10 unit to a top 5 unit to play at a championship caliber. And I would argue that Al Washington had them playing at a championship caliber for a good chunk of 2025. So on one hand, yes, I mean, full disclosure, I called Brian last night. I was pissed because it's just one of those, it's the realization of the entire 2024 staff is gone. That's frustrating. So we're not saying don't be frustrated, don't be happy with it. It's like, oh, there's absolutely no concern in the world. But on one hand, people can't be mad about the departure and then cope with that by downplaying everything that he's done. Can't do that.
Yeah, we're seeing those two extremes. And I would encourage people to understand this is a good thing from the standpoint of when programs are trying to poach your coaches, when NFL teams are trying to take your coaches, that tells us that when people watch this defense, they watch what Notre Dame is putting out there. They watch that this was a well-coached unit. There's respect for the staff that Marcus Freeman is building. And I'll assure you that there's coaches that are still on staff that are going to stay on staff that are turning jobs down. I can promise you that Gino Guidugli is not staying at Notre Dame because he wants out, but there's just no good offers out there. I can assure you that that's not the case. I can assure you that Mike Mickens and Al Washington both turned down a lot of jobs over the last year, a lot of jobs in order to stay at Notre Dame. But sometimes there's opportunities that come that you just say, hey, this is something that's going to benefit my future. And that's what they're all working towards. Just like Marcus Freeman wasn't disloyal for leaving Cincinnati to come to Notre Dame, despite his head coach at the time, basically saying so. That's what you're doing. You're trying to better yourself. And in both situations, there's a lot of talk. There's somebody asked a question like, what do you talk about? What's the talk about like this being Chris Ash's fault? Look, y'all, I have no problem criticizing Chris Ash. Y'all know this. You know what I mean? The next conversation Chris Ash and I have will be the first conversation that Chris Ash and I have. I don't owe him anything except I owe you guys way more than I owe him anything. If there was a reason that, hey, look, this is them beefing and they just wanted to get away from Chris Ash, I promise you I would tell you if there was any inclination of this. And I've asked this on both sides. And really what this came down to was opportunities that were earned opportunities from a couple of coaches to go better themselves. And with Mike Mickens, as I explained last week, or actually, gosh, it was earlier this week, wasn't it? It was this week. It's kind of been a crazy week. It was a coach who was literally the defensive coordinator on one of the first coaching staffs that Mike Mickens was a part of at Indiana State. A guy that was on the staff at Cincinnati when Mike Mickens was a player, who he has a very long respected relationship and who's considered one of the best defensive minds in the NFL right now, offered him an opportunity like a day after he got hired as the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens in Jesse Minter. Immediately reaches out to Mike Mickens and offers him a job. Within 3 days of him getting the head coaching job, Mickens is gone. Well, man, I'm going to say this. If Chris Ash was the reason Mike Mickens was leaving, he wouldn't have waited until the end of January to leave. I can promise you that. There were plenty of other jobs out there and people that wanted Mike Mickens, including Texas last year and several big-time programs this year that were very interested in Mike Mickens. He left because somebody that he trusts got a job and an opportunity that allowed him to have the same exact title he has now, secondary coach and pass game coordinator in the National Football League for one of the most respected organizations in the NFL. That's why he left. Did him and Chris Ash always see eye to eye? No, they didn't. Do you know where else that happens? Every other coaching room in America. You're going to have disagreements. But what we saw in the second half of the year was Chris Ash applying some of the things that we know that Mike Mickens believed in. So clearly there was a level of trust that Mike Mickens had to earn with Chris Ash. There was a level of trust that Chris Ash had to earn with Mike Mickens. And I believe they did that. If they hadn't have done that, folks, I promise you, Mike Mickens would have left way before the time he did. So there's things we can blame Chris Ash for, and there's going to be things he does in the future that we're going to be able to criticize him for, but I don't think we need to keep looking for reasons, and even if working with Chris Ash wasn't something that they were necessarily in love with compared to Al Golden, and that's why they left, even if that was true. So that's not a negative on Chris Ash. That's who Marcus Freeman hired to run the defense. And if coaches aren't bought into what he's trying to do, even if we don't agree with it, then they should find another job. But I don't believe that's the case. That's why there they are. I also want to respond to something that was brought up in the chat that I want to respond to as well from USMA. Was the move of Washington to coach to LB coach strategic? Did they want to get Partridge in place before Wash left? Again, no. Al Washington took a job with a head coach who just got hired a week ago. Jeff Hafley got hired with the Dolphins well after the move was made of Al Washington to linebackers. The plan was him to coach linebackers. The way he engaged with players, the way he was on the recruiting trail shows you that his intention was to stay at Notre Dame. But this opportunity came up with someone who, he coached with at Ohio State, who then left Ohio State to become the head coach at Al Washington's alma mater. There's a strong relationship there. There's a connection there. I've been talking with, I don't know if I should say who, but a good friend of mine who's tuned into a lot of coaching stuff. He and I were hearing, and especially him, because he's more in tune to this stuff than I was, all the way back in December, that other teams, including NFL teams, were reaching out to Mike Mickens and now Washington. I could show you text messages from back in December when he and I were having this conversation. And a lot of them they turned down. These were unique opportunities with storied franchises. I mean, the Miami Dolphins and the Baltimore Ravens. And that's why these decisions were made. I think it was strategic to move Washington to linebackers and then bring Charlie Partridge in. And that's why I say they've already replaced Al Washington from 2025. Now they're basically going to have to replace Max Bullough because Al Washington never coached linebackers. So that's why I say technically he's already been replaced from what he did a year ago. Now you're still trying to find the guy who's going to coach the linebackers. So as I said, not everything is a giant conspiracy. This wasn't Al Washington being forced out necessarily. This was hey, if an opportunity comes, we support that opportunity, as Marcus Freeman does with a lot of coaches. So I just kind of want to push back on that a little bit and remind people. I mean, when Marcus Freeman basically kind of nudged Jared Parker out the door, it happened right after the season. And that's why Gino Guidugli called plays in the Sun Bowl in December, because that was done right away. So I just want to make sure we can kind of, tamp down the noise. And look, you know me, I have no problem talking about beef going on in the coaching room if I have it. And I've talked about it on the board and at podcast, some of the issues there were, I think at the tailgate we did in November, I shared with people some beef that was going on in the coaching room. But again, that got worked through. But that stuff, that's common in coaching circles, that those things happen. It's a passionate sport. So I just want to, I would definitely tell you guys if this was the driver of why they left. I think there were a lot of factors as to why they left. At the end of the day, they left because they were pursued for great opportunities with people they know and trust. And that's the only thing that was going to convince them to leave a program that is led by a coach that they know and trust. And that's what it boils down to. So I just think sometimes, look, there's going to be plenty of things that we can push back on and criticize and all that. We don't need to invent things to occupy our time or to generate more clicks. And I would get a lot more views on this show right now if I was like, let me tell you the real scoop, and started talking about, like, I heard from someone who heard from someone who heard from someone that this was a beef going on in the locker room. That would be way more juicy and get a lot more clicks and talk. But that's not the truth. This is just part of coaching. And if Notre Dame has a coaching staff that isn't being pursued by other programs, that's a problem. That's a major problem. So at the end of the day, yeah, it's frustrating to see coaches leave, but it's also exciting for them because you know the opportunities in front of them. And it's also exciting to say, well, what's Coach Freeman going to do? It's also a little nerve-wracking as we wait to see what Coach Freeman's going to do. But you have to have a level of trust that, Marcus Freeman's going to go out there and make strong hires, and I hope that he does. Like every coach, he's going to make good hires and bad hires, and hopefully this offseason the hires he makes are good ones. And so far, it's 1 for 1. He's made one hire officially this offseason, and it was a great hire in Charlie Partridge.
Agreed. Now it comes down time for the answer and the response of what he does. At the end of the day, as much as I would love it and as much as a lot of Notre Dame fans would love it, not every coach can then just stay at Notre Dame forever and then eventually get promoted to a coordinator and then move on to be head coach. I understand that completely. So benefit of you being at Notre Dame and having the roster that you have right now is whoever's stepping in at linebacker and defensive back. It's a very attractive job. And yes, I wrote that in the article about replacing Al Washington yesterday. It's like, yeah, it's frustrating that Notre Dame essentially had a linebackers coach for a month, but whoever steps in, man, they're walking into a winning situation. I don't know if you can point to another team across the country that has the entire linebacker rotation from 2025 coming back in 2026 from top to bottom. So like when Dylan McCullough left, like when Al Golden left, like when Mike Mickens left like 96 hours ago, and like when Al Washington left less than 24 hours ago, whoever steps in is walking into a winning situation. Mm-hmm. And that's something that gives me a lot of confidence on top of the confidence that I have in Marcus Freeman because he's a defensive coach and all head coaches have their stamp. And I have to believe that linebacker is something that he holds near and dear to his heart. Yeah, and I have full faith that the replacement is going to be.
That's the last position I'm worried about. Like, honestly, with Notre Dame replacing a coach, I'm more worried about the DB hire than I am the linebacker hire. There's no, you know what I mean? Like, that's his baby. And, you hear some things. If what I heard about who they're going to hire is who they hire, I'll be very happy at both positions. But, until deals are done, and as far as I was told as of this morning, no deals are done. But as long as deals get done, I think we're going to all be happy with the changes. And it won't be, well, they're way better off now than they were with that guy. It's more about, okay, is this a championship caliber staff? And that's going to be the question. Let's get a couple mailbag questions about this out of the way, Trev, and then we'll kind of go on to the more full mailbag. We have one from Iden Benami. He said, after Coach Washington's departure, Coach Freeman is like Benny in the Sandlot at the end. When all the teammates leave and he's the last man standing, I have faith we won't miss a beat. Hey, you know what? It's good faith to have. Being a Notre Dame coach means an automatic promotion with 2 to 4 years, a minus 1,000 lock. Well, I'm glad you didn't make that bet with Mike Mickens because you'd have lost because he was here for 6 years. So USMA said, is this really Ash cleaning house? Mostly sarcastic. No, this isn't Chris Ash cleaning house. Will most of the coaches, if not all, have some sort of connection to Chris Ash? As we've said before, probably. I don't know that all of them will, but that's normal. That's what a lot of teams do. And if you trust a guy enough to be your coordinator, then you should trust him to have a big say in who he's worked with. I mean, that's no different than the offense. There's a grand total of one coach on staff that hasn't worked with Mike Denbrock before. That's Joe Rudolph. One. So Mike Denbrock was like, hey, I don't think Mike Brown's getting the job done. I think Marcus Freeman should listen to him. I'm not saying he's saying that. That was an example. I think Mike Denbrock thinks highly of Mike Brown, which is why he worked with him at Cincinnati and why he's been okay with him at Notre Dame. I'm just making a point. A coordinator should have a say on who his assistants are. Like you should have a say on, hey, I'm trying to carry out this defense the best I can. Well, I need someone that can coach it the way that I want to coach it. Like it or not. And then it's up to Marcus Freeman to say, A, you shouldn't be coaching it that way. Or B, okay, I buy into what you want to do. Let's go get some people to support what you're doing. So when coaches leave, he should have a say in that. And if Marcus Freeman doesn't have faith in him to have a say, then he should find a new defensive coordinator. And the fact that he hasn't tells me that he has a level of trust in Chris Ash. We could disagree with it as fans. That's fine. But we shouldn't dismiss every coach that gets talked about simply because he has a relationship with Chris Ash. That's not a healthy or productive way of going about this thing. So there's a couple others here, I believe, Trev, about Washington, and then we'll move on. Let's see here. Here's one from Coleman Smith.
How does Washington leaving affect the 2027 class? I know he had some great relationships with Marcus Fakatu, Carlos May, etc.
Yeah, so what's interesting is Freeman went down and visited Marcus Fakatu and Carlos May and some of the other top D linemen and basically laid the groundwork for Charlie Partridge. And so they were still having him being involved. We've talked to we've had some updates on the board, Coleman. I would encourage you, I know you're a board member, go look at those. And one of the things that Sean Davis had up on the board was talking to Marcus Fakatu and some other people where they said Coach Washington did a great job talking to us about Coach Partridge, and then Coach Partridge and then later came to visit them. So I think that groundwork was already laid. And the one thing and I was talking with somebody about this today, one of the things that helps Notre Dame is Marcus Freeman is adamant that, yes, we're going to talk about the job I'm doing and my vision as head coach, and we're going to talk about the job you guys do as assistant coaches. But at the end of the day, the foundation of what you got to sell on the recruiting trail is Notre Dame. And that usually gives them a little bit of a grace period when guys leave. It doesn't mean that they're going to bat 1,000 keeping everybody when coaches leave, but it's why they have a better success record than most people do. So it's really going to come down to, can Charlie Partridge do the job of finishing that you hoped that Al Washington could do? I don't know the answer to that question, but I will say that Al Washington did an exceptional job the last couple of weeks of getting out on the road and not only going out and seeing linebackers, but also seeing some of the defensive linemen and letting them know, hey, you're in great hands. You're in great hands. I talked to somebody last night who said basically Washington is talking to all the recruits and telling them all, everything I told you about Notre Dame was flat out 100% the way it is. That's still the best place for you. I was told that last night. So I think that speaks volumes about the whole, why would Al Washington be trying to convince players to go play for a defensive coordinator he didn't like and didn't respect and wanted to get away from? And I'm pretty confident in that source's knowledge of what Al Washington is or isn't doing. So I think that should answer some of the concerns of hey, is this a beef with Chris Ash? I don't think that's the case at all. So Trev, I think that'll wrap up. I think a lot of the Washington stuff, I think we kind of were able to knock out here, and we can move on to some of our other questions.
Right on. Well, let's dive into part 2 of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's the Friday free-for-all mailbag. Covered some breaking news, not necessarily so much breaking because it happened last night. But, Brian, let's dive into kind of the meat and potatoes of the rest of this Friday free-for-all mailbag.
Yeah, and we'll get started off with kind of similar things. Obviously, there'll be a lot more questions about the coaching staff, but we knocked out some of the main ones. But let's go and get rocking and rolling here.
From Notre Dame, it just means more. True or false? If Notre Dame's defense takes a semi-significant step back next year, the bulk of the blame should be placed on Coach Marcus Freeman, not Chris Ash.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. I mean, you're the head football coach. You're a defensive coordinator. You're a defensive guy. The one thing that you expect the defensive head coach to do is make sure the defense is on point. I mean, I don't know what else is more important than making sure your coordinators are doing a good job, making sure your assistant coaches are developing young people on and off the field. There is no donor's hand you need to shake, no conference you need to speak at, no media appearance more important than making sure that is happening in your program. Now, Chris Ash will also deserve a good chunk of that too. So I don't know if actually that I'd say bulk, but at the end of the day, the buck stops with the head football coach. Now, that doesn't mean every time Chris Ash makes a bad call, we're going to be like, freaking Freeman. You know what I mean? Like, we'll be critical of the job Ash does when it's required. We'll praise the job that Chris Ash does when it's the situation calls for it, and call it down the middle. Hopefully, we're doing a lot more praising of Chris Ash next year than we are criticizing. But hence the title, Irish Breakdown. We'll break down the good and the bad. And but at the end of the day, when a team falls short, it's on to Marcus Freeman to ensure that like, look, Chris Ash did, I thought, a terrible job the first 2 games of the season. But at the same time, it's like, well, did the head coach not know that this is what they were going to do? Was he not aware that they were not going to be was there any point in the time in these games where he was like, hey man, we might actually want to heat this guy up a little bit. We may want to make this adjustment. Hey, this player's getting torched out there. Let's give so-and-so a try. That's what a head coach should do. And he didn't do that. And hopefully that won't be the case. But, when he did finally get involved, I think we saw things continue at a very impressive rate. And hopefully that continues in 2026.
Absolutely. I mean, we're going to see two completely different sample sizes in back-to-back years. In 2025, they were without a defensive coordinator at the start of the year. But they had every single assistant coming back. This year, they have a returning defensive coordinator, and all of the assistants are now gone. So the biggest thing and task at hand for Marcus Freeman is going to be getting everybody up to speed as quickly as possible, working together as a cohesive unit. I'm actually relatively confident in whoever he brings in. Now it's just about, will all three of Charlie Partridge and whoever the linebacker coach is and the DB coach have a full understanding of what's in that room going into it? And will Chris Ash be able to do his job in getting them up to speed as well? But like Brian said, the buck always stops with the head coach. Always does. Another one from ND, it just means more. In your opinion, which will be worse, the exodus of the staff in 26 or 22?
This one won't be as, and I'm taking by worst for him to mean volume. So I'm working with that assumption. I think there's three coaches right now that are gone from this staff. I think one more could leave that I'm aware of. I think there's one more. That's just all I'll say, and I think they'll be able to make that replacement relatively easily as well. But in 2022, they lost. So thinking about like who the coaching staff was in 2022 and who left. So you had Tommy Reese left. You had Brian Mason left. Harry Heastan left. Chris O'Leary left. So I think that's everybody, right? So you had 4 leave then, and I think you'll end up potentially having 4 leave now. So I think it'll be about the same volume-wise. It's a good question.
From Muhammad Abdi, Brian, with Mickens' departure, do you think the secondary recruiting takes a hit more than the player development?
Again, Muhammad, I can't know that answer until we know who the replacement's going to be. I know there's a name out there, and people like to put it in the chat because other people like to talk about it. But the reason I'm not talking about it is because it's not a done deal yet. And until it's a signed deal, I know there's some things that they're working through and some demands on both sides that got to be met and agreed to. I don't think it's a done deal right now. I hope that it's a done deal before the weekend's out, but it's not a done deal yet. So I can't possibly have an answer to that until I know who the replacement is going to be. Is there a scenario where that is true? Of course, depending on who the hire is. There's a scenario where, player development takes a bigger hit and they hire a great recruiter. There's a scenario where both take a hit. There's a scenario where both of them just keep rolling along. And if they make the hire, I think they're going to make, from what I've learned so far about him, talking to people in the business that know him and looking at the numbers, and I'm going to take a film dive tonight, but just, from what we saw during the season, I think it'd be a strong hire, and I feel comfortable that things will be able to keep rolling because Mike Mickens has left a great foundation behind for his replacement. If they hire who I think they're going to hire, I'll be very pleased with that. Very pleased. Just like we were pleased with Charlie Partridge replacing Max Bulla and then moving out Washington linebackers, just like we were pleased with Jaywan Sider replacing Dylan McCullough. And so that's the key, right? Is you're going to lose coaches. Who do you replace them with? And so far this offseason, Marcus Freeman's hit a home run. Hopefully they'll be able to close the deal with the DB coach. And if they hire at linebackers, who I'm told they're looking to hire at linebackers, then this is going to be a grand slam home run. In my opinion, you lost 3 really good coaches and replace them with 3 really good coaches. And that's going to be the key.
100%. It's always about how you respond. From Salty, is the increased number of ACC Friday and even Thursday night games a good or a bad thing? I mean, I don't know. I am a traditionalist in that I believe,
It's very different.
Yeah, it is. I'm more of a traditionalist in the sense that I think college football should be played on Saturdays. Now, that being said, Notre Dame's affiliation with the ACC, all of their games against the ACC are on Saturdays. So, I guess personally, it doesn't really affect me too much. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. I think some of it's just in response a little bit to a degree of the NFL also trying to have games on Monday and Thursday and Saturday and Sunday and just trying to cast a wider net. But I don't know if I can say it's good or bad. I guess I'm relatively impartial to this, Salty.
I'm sorry, I just read another question that Salty said that just made me chuckle a lot.
From Muhammad Abdi, Fact or Fiction, Freeman is better than Kelly at hiring assistant coaches.
This offseason will go a long way towards determining that. So far, he's done a pretty good job, but Brian Kelly also made some strong hires. And yes, he made some. The problem with Brian Kelly is when he made bad hires, they were disastrous.
Yeah.
Like you look at his first coaching staff and there were some good football coaches on it. Chuck Martin, Bill Lewis, you had Mike Elston, you had Ed Warner, who's a good O-line coach. He's not Harry Heastan, but he was a good O-line coach. And Mike Elston, and there's some good coaches on there. But then having Charlie Molnar as your offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach was a disaster of a hire. Bob Diaco was a strong hire. And then he gets rid of Charlie Molnar and promotes Chuck Martin as the OC, and Chuck helps lead Notre Dame to the championship that season. There were plenty of good hires. And it was Bob Elliott, I think it would have been that first, not Bill Lewis. Bill Lewis coached for Charlie Weiss, but Bob Elliott was the guy. The late Bob Elliott was the guy that they had out there. And then he had, like I said, he had some bad hires. He brought Brian Polian on to coach special teams. That was a bad hire when that happened. He hired Harry Heastan. It was a great hire. He also hired Brian Van Gorder. It was a terrible hire. You know what I mean? But you look at Brian Kelly, and Brian Van Gorder was one of the worst hires ever by a Notre Dame head coach. But who were his 4 other defensive coordinator hires? Bob Diaco, great hire. Mike Elko, great hire. Clark Lee, great hire. And Marcus Freeman, great hire. So he was hit or miss, but when he made a mistake, it was a disastrous mistake. And then he would hold on to those disasters for way too long. And Marcus Freeman, I think, has not made a single disastrous hire. The one that I thought turned out to be a really bad one, he got rid of after a second season. And Like, I don't even think Jared Parker was a disaster of a hire. I mean, that team scored 39 points a game. He just wasn't good in big games, and he just wasn't like elite level like you need it to be. He made the change after a year. So far, I would say that's true, but these next two hires are going to cement that or raise questions about, well, I don't know now. And that's what makes them so important, Trev.
Yep, agreed. Was Mike Mickens also hired by Brian Kelly?
He was. He was hired before the 2020 season. He coached 2 seasons under Brian Kelly before he coached 1 season under Brian Kelly before Freeman arrived as defensive coordinator, and then his 3rd season was Freeman's first year as head coach. So, yes, he was hired before Marcus Freeman was. Year before Marcus Freeman was.
Some of this, Muhammad, is just the duration that Brian Kelly was the head coach. Like, you're going to make more impactful hires the longer that you're a coach. Brian Kelly was the head coach at Notre Dame for 12 seasons, from 10 to 21, and Marcus Freeman is going into his 5th year. So I believe that if Freeman is at Notre Dame for the same duration of what Brian Kelly was, then I think Freeman would be a runaway favorite, especially because he wasn't making the disastrous hires that Brian Kelly did. So, I mean, look, we're talking about some people have talked about the Chris Ash hire being a quote unquote disastrous hire. And if that's Freeman's disastrous hire, look at how the defense finished last year. They still ended the year as a top 12 defense. You are not finishing the year as a top 12 defense with Brian Van Gorder at the helm of that Notre Dame defense. So it's just the levels to it, Muhammad, honestly.
Chris Ash's worst game as a defensive coordinator was without a doubt, by far, by 1,000 miles, the Texas A&M game. That was a relatively normal occurrence under Brian Van Gorder. That's kind of just what they did.
Chris Ash's worst performance was against Texas A&M, a playoff team. Brian Van Gorder's, one of them was against Northwestern.
Yeah. Who at that time was had 2 wins. Their offense is averaging 17 points a game, and they went out and just moved the ball all over on them. It was just an absolute train wreck. Gave up 36 points to a Michigan State team that went on to win 3 games that season, one of them being over you at home. Yeah. But the Chris Ash hire, the story on that one will ultimately be written this year, because look, you can say, I don't know how good of a hire that was, because yes, they went and dominated the end of the year, second half of the year, but it took a while. And the mistakes that he made early in the season are why you started 0-2, which kept you from the playoffs. That's not good. But I would say things are certainly trending in the right direction. And if he can build on what he did last season and not revert back to a better version of what they did the first 2 games, then we're going to look back at this and say, yeah, I got off to a rough start, but I think they made up for it in 26 by winning a title. You know what I mean? Yeah, agree, Trev.
From Coleman Smith, is Mylan Graham the most gifted athlete Notre Dame has landed at wideout since 2020?
I would say, he's in the conversation. He's in the conversation. I mean, I think Bubba Frazier's in the conversation.
Cam
just
Williams
gifted athlete.
Who? Cam Williams.
Who? Cam Williams. I would argue Cam might be a better athlete than Mylan Graham. That's a very good one as well. Braden Robinson's an elite athlete. He's just 5'6", 5'7". I mean, that's a bit of a drawback too. But Malachi Fields, pound for pound. Look what he's doing at the Senior Bowl. Is a pretty darn good athlete. So, I don't. He's in the conversation. I'll say that he's in the conversation.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. His career didn't pan out, but as far just from being athletically gifted, Tobias Merriweather was a freak. It's 6'4", ran a 4 something, lower 4s. That's a crazy athlete whose just career didn't pan out.
Yeah.
From Play Like a Champ, is it reasonable to be more concerned about Chris Ash reverting to what he wants the defense to look like now that all the defensive coaches have left? I wasn't too concerned about this until now.
I think we're making too much of this. I'll say it. Look, that's a concern of mine. From the standpoint of worst case scenario. It's not a concern of mine. Now that he's running everybody out of town, they're going to be doing this mess and they're going to be doing that mess and this dumb thing and that dumb thing because Chris Ash was trying to get rid of all the people and Mike Mickens was like, Mike Mickens, like, that meme of Jon Snow where it's like him holding the sword and there's like 1,000. It wasn't like, Jon Snow and Chris Ash and all his cronies are coming at him trying to run a soft, passive, zone built defense. And Mike Mickens was the only thing holding him back. I don't know that I believe that to be true. I do believe that Chris Ash wants to play less man coverage, which is fine. It's just you can be aggressive in zone coverage, which they show there in the year because they didn't play as much man as they in 25 as they did in 24. And they were still very good at those things. So it's the passiveness of it. I do have some concern about that to a degree. We saw that on third down. We saw that in the late in games when they went into the fourth quarter of games. We saw him going back to the sit back, keep everything in front of you, BS, 3rd and 13, dropping into coverage, having your linebackers drop deeper than the sticks. It's just, that stuff's frustrating. And I think that's fair, but I don't think we need to dwell on it until we have a reason to dwell on it. And we can mention that it's something that he needs to avoid. But at the end of the day, that's not about that. That should not be a Mike Mickens out Washington Max Bulla thing. That's a Marcus Freeman thing, making sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, too much is being made of the shift that we saw from the first to second half of Purdue. The rest of the season, it wasn't Al Washington, Mike Mickens, and Max Bulla sitting down in a room with Marcus Freeman drawing up the defensive game plan for the week, and then they just gave Chris Ash the headset on Saturday. That's just not what it was, folks. It wasn't. And so is it a concern to Brian's point? Yeah, it is. It's also a thought that's crossed my mind. I'd be lying to you if I said that it wasn't. But that was a concern when I still thought Mike Mickens and Al Washington were still going to be here. So that's not just specific to them leaving. So I sometimes stuff gets made a little bit, gets blown a little bit too much out of proportion.
It's okay to ask the question, but it's ultimately going to be up to Marcus Freeman to make sure that doesn't happen, no matter who the assistant coaches were. My concern of that isn't greater or lesser now than it was before.
Yeah. From J. Melvin Bryan, back in August, someone asked you, would Miami and Notre Dame ever reach the intensity of the 80s again? And you said more than likely no. If both are ranked in the top 10 to 5 come November 7th, will it?
No. When are they scheduled to play again?
Notre Dame and Miami?
Yeah, Notre Dame ACC future schedules. The whole thing about the 80s was they played every year. They knew they were going to play every year. That's kind of the thing you look at and say, it made that a rivalry. They play in 26. They play again in 28. They play again after that in 31. They play in 32. So between now and 2032, they're going to play each other 4 times. Play each other again in 34, then again in 37. So I just don't know that you can have that same hated rivalry if you don't play a team every year. Will it be intense? Yeah. I never said that Notre Dame fans were going to sit at the Miami game between 2 top 10 teams and be like, oh, whatever, this is another top 10 game. There's a lot on the line, but it's on the line because of what happened this past year, not necessarily because we all view that as a rivalry. I expect it to be certainly intense, but I don't think it's going to, even this year, is going to match what it was in the 80s. I mean, there was a genuine hatred between the programs. I think the only hatred that exists now is between the fan bases. I don't know that Notre Dame hates Miami. I think Miami has some players that said some things about Jeremiah Love after they won a playoff game, but it's like, it's because young people aren't smart enough to do their own homework. They were responding to a fake AI quote or fake quote that Jeremiah Love made that he never made. So it's like, it wasn't even like real controversy. So it was just 2 childish dudes on TikTok. That's all it really was. So I just don't view it as like it was back then. Like, am I worried about there being a brawl in the tunnel before the game this year on November 7th? No. That obviously was something to be concerned about in 1988. So that's where I'm at. I don't think so. Doesn't mean it's not going to be intense and not going to be important.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Totally fair.
And then there was a follow-up from Jay Melvin on the question as well.
If Notre Dame and Miami are both undefeated and in the top 5 come November 7th, it will be the most heated and emotional game at Rockne since 05 USC.
Heated and emotional game since 05. I mean, 18 Michigan was pretty heated and emotional. I think that one was pretty big. I think USC 2017 was pretty insane and intense early in that game. Pretty heated early in that game. I mean, I'll say this, Jay Melvin, will it be the most? I'd have to spend more time thinking about that. Is it going to be in the conversation? Could it potentially be the most? Yeah, it could definitely potentially be that. Yeah. But there's been a couple. Because I think intense, emotional was the playoff game. But heated, I don't know that the Indiana game was heated. So, yeah. I think the A&M game this year was pretty emotional, intense. Was it heated? No. So I think this one could be that. I'd have to think through some games, but 18 Michigan is one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
As in the conversation to that. 2012 Stanford was a pretty darn physical, heated football game. Those two teams did not like each other. It'll be in the conversation, yeah. Part of it depends on how good Miami is. If Miami's as good as what you and I think they'll be, Trev, based on our preseason rankings, I think you had them 6th or 5th. I had them 7th.
At 5th.
Yeah, we think they're going to be pretty good. And their schedule's not that hard until the Notre Dame game.
Yeah.
So as long as they're still good, yeah, it's going to be intense and heated. And I think it could potentially rival what we saw in 05. But it's not so much the Miami thing that it's that way. It's the fact that Notre Dame, in a lot of ways, views Miami as the team that kept them out of the playoffs. More so than just wanting payback for the loss last year. It's a little bit of a different element.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, now more than ever, the largest factor which will most impact the season and Coach Freeman's legacy at Notre Dame is his ability to hire and properly work with his assistant coaches. Yeah, I believe that. I think there's a lot of truth to that, Ballpeen. I mean, look, we can check the box on the state of the roster. There's a lot of people, myself included, I'm sure Brian included. We haven't obviously done our previews for the 2026 season. We haven't done the full schedule breakdown. We're putting out way too early opponent overviews, things before depth charts are officially set. But we are two people under the belief that we think Notre Dame is going to win the national championship in 2026. We're not the only ones. FanDuel also still has them as the favorite to win the national championship in 2026 as well. So there's a lot of teams buying into the hype with Notre Dame, but what do you also need? You had a lot of attrition on one side of the ball. And I said this earlier in the show. We're seeing two completely different sample sizes year over year. In 2025, you lost your D coordinator, returned every single assistant. In 2026, you returned your D coordinator and you lost every single assistant. And so how quickly Marcus Freeman and Chris Ash can work together to get that side of the ball working together as a cohesive unit, as a staff, is going to go a long way. To Brian's point, they already hired a really strong defensive line candidate in Charlie Partridge. That's step one. Now you have to repeat that with your defensive backs coach and replacing Mike Mickens. And you have to do that replacing Al Washington and Max Bulla, replacing the linebacker coaching position. If he's able to do that, I have a lot of faith in them moving forward. But there's always a lag. Notre Dame had the best running back room in the country last year. There was still a lag with Jaywan Sider coming in and coaching. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price weren't running the way that they should have in the first two games. It was rushed. Their footwork was changed. There's always going to be that lag. But the quicker they come together as a cohesive unit, the less and less that lag time is going to be. And so, yeah, Ballpeen, I think there's a lot of truth to this. From Chicago Irish, is there any truth to Mike Mickens not liking Chris Ash, which led to his departure? And would Mickens be the top candidate for the defensive coordinator job when it comes open?
To the second one, it's unlikely, barring something that he does with the Ravens changing how Marcus Freeman views him. I think it became very clear last year when Marcus Freeman didn't even give Mike Mickens a formal interview that he doesn't view him as a guy that's capable of being a D coordinator in Notre Dame. People say, well, what would be the point of a formal interview? Doesn't he already know? No, he doesn't know. Marcus Freeman and Mike Mickens don't sit down and talk about what Mike Mickens would do as a defensive coordinator. But as far as that leading to his departure, I can only tell you what I'm told. And I've talked to multiple people about this very close to the situation, and I don't believe that's the reason he left. There's a reason that he left for the job he did. As I told you guys, he left. He announced his departure, I think, 3 days after Jesse Minter was named the head coach of the Ravens. Someone he knows, someone he worked with, someone who was a GA on a staff that he was a player on. He was the D coordinator on the Indiana State staff that Mike Mickens was one of his first coaching jobs. This is someone he knows, someone he trusts, and an opportunity that he couldn't pass up. This was not about him wanting to get out of here. Because if this was about him wanting to get out of here, I think he would have left before this. So I think sometimes we like drama. I've called this before. It's a male soap opera. And if I had any good information that was leading to this being true, I'd tell you. I'd have no problem telling you. The reason I'm telling you I don't think it's true is because that's what all my intel is telling me, that's not true. Did Mike Mickens and Chris Ash always agree? Heck no. I just don't think Mike Mickens would have waited for 2 months after the season was over to take a job when a lot of jobs are now gone if he was doing the best he could to get out of Notre Dame. You're telling me this is the first good job that's come open in the last 2 months? When you are trying to get away from a guy, you're not as picky as you are when as you normally would be. Look, man, you're offering me more money and some would think, cool, let's take it. Let me get out of here. I just don't think that's the case. And if there was, and if I learned 2 weeks from now that this actually is true, then I'll come back and tell you, hey, this is what I heard, and this is the deal. So, yeah, I'll tell you. I've never been shy about talking about drama in the program. Players leaving because they didn't like Joe Rudolph. I stand by that. It's still true as far as why those players left. I have no problem with that. I've talked about how there was drama in the coaching office when Chancey Stuckey left. That's why Freeman fired him right after the season. I've shared those things when they've been true, and I could validate it with enough people. And that's just not true here based on all the people I've talked to. So either this is like the greatest cover-up in Notre Dame football history, or it's just people who don't like Chris Ash taking bits of data. Oh, Freeman or Mickens and Ash had a big blow-up before Purdue. That's true. That's true. But that's happened with coaches who like each other a lot. I mean, I was told of some disagreements that Chip Long and Harry Hiestand had. Chip Long adores Harry Hiestand and vice versa. They're, I believe, friends to this day. But that's what happens in football. When you have people with big egos who are convicted in what they believe, they're going to have those things. Every coaching staff I've ever been on, including coaching staffs where we won conference championships and national championships, we would have those kind of disagreements. I had a coach threaten to stick a fork in my eye in the middle of a game. Literally. I told him, say, look, let's run this. And we'd been arguing. The head coach was our play caller at Duquesne. We'd been arguing. I think I've shared this story before. We'd been arguing all week about whether or not we could run double post against Robert Morris, who played cover 2. And you're not supposed to be able to run double post against cover 2. But I was like, well, they're running cover 2, but that safety who's a pit transfer thinks he's the man, and he thinks he can flat foot against an inside vertical release and then still get deep. He didn't, we have guys that are, 2 of our receivers got signed by the NFL. So we're arguing all week. They're coming back. It's a close game. They had just made it I think it was like 26-20 game. We were up 20-0. They'd come back, and he and I are just going at each other during the timeout. We're coming out. We had just got the ball. We had the ball at the 15. And he's like, he basically threatens to stick a fork in my eye. He says, if this doesn't work, you're effing fired. Says that to me. I'm like, call the play. 85-yard touchdown. Great call, Driscoll. That's football. I wasn't afraid to go in the locker room because I'm like, oh, he threatened to stick a fork in my eye. I think I might need to put goggles on. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think he was actually going to fire me. That's football. That's the intensity of being involved in football games. So, I don't put as much on that stuff. I think that it took time for Chris Ash and Mike Mickens to develop a respect for the other's ability. And I think eventually that came. Could you have said Mike Mickens would have left Notre Dame in September because of his relationship with Chris Ash? Potentially. But that's not the reason now. And if that was the reason, he wouldn't have waited 2 whole months until the season was over with before he left, with very few jobs still open. I just don't think that makes any sense.
From Brandon Gilbert, I stopped watching ESPN college football shows because of the increasing Notre Dame bashing throughout the years. Do the Feinbaums, the Mark Mays, the Cam Newtons, the Des Howards get extra money to dog ND? I mean, probably not directly, but when viewership goes up, I'm sure that there's some sort of pay structure there that gets them more money. Look, at the end of the day, it's just hot topics to talk about. And whether you're praising Notre Dame or you're dogging Notre Dame, it's going to get clicks and it's going to get views from Notre Dame fans and from anti-Notre Dame fans. That's just how it goes. Because the people that love to hate Notre Dame will continue to love to hate Notre Dame, and the people that love Notre Dame will continue to love Notre Dame. But the common denominator in there, folks, is Notre Dame. And that's why we've talked about this a lot, man. Like, and it's unfortunate. It's annoying. You just don't pay attention to it. For me personally, how I deal with it, I just don't care. It's unavoidable because it's going to get sent to you. Like, I don't sit down and tune into every Good Morning Football show. I don't watch Sports Center. But it gets sent to you. If anybody has social media, the only way to do it is to just leave the grid, stop having Wi-Fi. Because you're going to see it, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever. I'm sure if MySpace is still active, it's out there. So I just don't care. Because whether Notre Dame's good or not, that's what they're going to say. And it's unfortunate. And because of the current state of social media today, anybody's willing to listen to anybody with a blue check mark that has a microphone. And that's how it just goes. So I'm with you, Brandon. I don't watch them anymore either, but now I just kind of look at it and laugh, especially with some of the takes that people have.
I don't know and don't care. I don't think it's extra money. I don't think Cam Newton needs anyone to tell him to talk bad about Notre Dame. I just think he is paid to be flamboyant and to make takes that get talked about a lot. Because here's the thing. Cam had some crazy comments about Notre Dame that are just absurd. But have you seen the video and the Twitter clicks that those comments have gotten? They're insane. So you know what that means for ESPN? Money. Have you seen the number of views for Emmanuel Acho said one of the dumbest things I have ever seen in my life? And look at the number of views that he has on that video and on those Twitter posts. Skip Bayless says some of the most moronic things you'll ever hear. Colin Cowherd says some of the dumbest stuff you'll ever hear. Do you ever see the views on the shows where they say some of the dumbest things? Tons of views and clicks. I think it's more about that, and Notre Dame happens to be one of those things they know fires people up one way or the other. I don't think Feinbaum is paid to say bad things about Notre Dame. I just think that's just who he is. And he feels that way about Notre Dame, and he also understands how the business works and understands that saying things like that are going to get him treated a certain way. I'm not a big Desmond Howard fan at all, but I've never found Desmond's comments about Notre Dame to be disingenuous, meaning I think he believes them. I think he's wrong, but I think he believes them. And I'm okay with someone who has views that I think are wrong. I think Cam Newton believes the things he says about Notre Dame. I don't think he's being paid extra to do so. I think it's like, you know how Cam feels about Notre Dame, so make sure as the host you bring that up in the show. So I don't think Desmond Howard is paid off. I think because I've also heard Desmond Howard praise and defend Notre Dame. He was one of the few people at ESPN that I felt from some clips that people would send me that like actually said some things that maybe Notre Dame should be that way. I've heard Joey Galloway say some pretty dumb things about Notre Dame in the past. This year I heard Joey Galloway saying some things about Notre Dame like before the playoff, like they need to be in because right now they can beat anybody. And right now they're better than Miami. So when he says things about Notre Dame that I don't agree with or like, do I think Joey Galloway is being paid to say no? I think he's being genuine when he praises Notre Dame and genuinely criticizes Notre Dame. I just think he has misguided or wrong views. but I don't think it's some conspiracy for him to talk about Notre Dame. I think the way that it's portrayed, the topics about Notre Dame, and then you get people that have a view on it, and you get people that give hot takes and things like that, and that's how you make your money. But I don't think it's like, I think they purposely go after Notre Dame because it makes them money, and Notre Dame's not on their network. I don't think people are paid to say things that they don't necessarily believe about Notre Dame.
Yeah, 100%. It's a two-way street. I mean, there's people that love and support Notre Dame that I also disagree with some of their views about Notre Dame, and they love the same team that I love. It's just how it goes sometimes. I get you. From Broke Neck Boy, I love watching 90s football like the Nebraska-Miami Orange with middle linebackers having neck braces and crop top shirts. Peak football.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. I wish we could kind of play old school football with like modern equipment. Like I'm watching the Miami game from 1990 the other day. Pops up on my feed. And I'm watching Rocket run his kick return back as these giant linebacker shoulder pads are swaying back and forth. And I'm like, good Lord. Imagine how fast Rocket would have been if he wore the same equipment that like Jordan Faison wears, where he's like barely wearing any lower body pads. And he's got these little like pads that kickers back in the 80s would be like, dude, how do you even safe in those things? You know what I mean? Like, it's wild, the difference in equipment. But yeah, I do kind of miss neck rolls a little bit. That's why I kind of like that kid from Georgia Tech last year, because he had that neck roll. Who was the other kid we were talking about? There's a kid this year, the kid from Stanford. Yeah, Matt Rose from Stanford had like a neck roll. Yeah, I do kind of. You know what else I miss? I miss the black Newman gloves. Everybody had the black Newman gloves. Like, that was football season, man. But yeah, I do miss some of those. I don't miss crop tops, shirts. That was never. Like, we see that too much. I want to tell Notre Dame players, like, pull your jersey down. I can't tell if it's, from up in the press box, I can't tell if it's Tay Johnson or Don Shula running that first pick back, at first, because it's like, I can't see the number. And then you realize, okay, that guy's kind of tall. I think that's Tay. But, like, pull your shirt down. So they still do some of that kind of stuff now. But, yeah, Trev, 90s football was fun to watch because it was the evolution from power running, and we were starting to see the throwing game becoming so much more important. Like I think it was Andre Ware won the Heisman in '89, and I remember at the time just the numbers that he put up. People are just like, man, that's just, we've never seen anything like that before, and it's so crazy. And you look at the numbers that year, Trev, that he won the Heisman. He passed for 4,699 yards and 46 touchdowns, and we're just blown away with those numbers. And that's even still a lot now. But it's not as, like, you see more of that now. Like, I mean, that's kind of what Kyle McCord did last year. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as insane now as it was then. But like, you started to see that. I mean, last year there were 6 different quarterbacks that threw for 4,000 yards. Kyle McCord threw for 4,700 yards in 13 games. Andre Ware threw for 4,600 yards in 11. So it was still way more than it was then, but the game has changed quite a bit. The number of passes he threw per game was insane, but it was so it was so abnormal to what everything else anybody was doing. And, running backs, we were coming off the decade of the running back, where like almost every year was some running back was winning the Heisman, so it starts to evolve, and then, you start to see teams throw the ball a little bit more. And, Dennis Erickson brings the run and shoot type of mentality to Miami when Jimmy Johnson leaves. So you saw that evolution, and as that's changed, then players have changed. But I'm not going to lie to you, I still like going back and watching some 1990s Notre Dame football and some 1990s Nebraska football. And that was kind of where it had reached its kind of peak, was like that 95 championship game, Trev, that I had you watch this past year, where you had the new up-and-coming Steve Spurrier offense, which looks a lot like what people run now, versus that power football of Nebraska, the power option. And at the time, the power option was still the dominant force. That was the team that scored 60 points in the game. Now, if those two styles played, most likely it'd be the Florida team that would likely have more success. So it has been wild to watch that evolution, but I do sometimes go back and say I kind of miss big boy football. And I'll go watch some games from the 90s. I don't watch as many 80s games other than Notre Dame because that was still too option-oriented, where what I liked about Notre Dame and Nebraska was it was power option. It was eye football. They'd run counter, they'd run power, they'd run ISO on top of their option stuff. I'd rather watch that than like Oklahoma from the 80s with Jamel Holloway running the triple. You know what I mean? It was a little bit different. You know, how Nebraska ran their offense with Tommy Frazier was a little different than how they ran it with Turner Gill in the 80s. You know what I mean? So that evolution has been fun. And there's going to come a day when we get back to some team is going to dominate running the football, and we're going to start to see a shift in other ways as well. It's just the nature of the game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is funny how much the game has changed, especially offensively. I like going back and watching 90s football and like 80s football for like defense. Like that's when you see like the neck rolls and like kids are just laying the wood on people, man. I mean, it's nuts. It is funny though, like how much like we talk about turnovers, winning the turnover margin and protecting the football and all that and big games, and it's so crucial. And I'm not saying that it wasn't crucial back in the day, but like the 88 Notre Dame Miami game had like 10 combined turnovers in that game. That game was nuts. Like, and I that's an 88 game that I go back and watch all the time. It's just crazy how different it was. You have like NFL quarterbacks who are like league MVPs and like historic NFL quarterbacks who are throwing like 16 interceptions a season. You do that in today's game, you're benched. It's just crazy how much it's changed, how much is built on efficiency. But yeah, man, there are some games that I'll definitely go back and watch. It's a little different for me because like I didn't get to live through it and like watch it live and reminisce. But I love watching old school defense. Like that is fun. I think it's one of the reasons why I love the Notre Dame 2012 defense. Because that was kind of the closest thing that replicated like an old vintage defense. Just massive guys up front, big old 6'2", 245, 250-pound linebackers just flying downhill. Yeah, man. Stuff was fun. Super chat from Raymond Harmon. Appreciate you, man. Put the info in the chat to join the boards. IB is the best in the business.
I will do that right now. So, and then, of course, it's always down at the bottom. You see it scrolling at the bottom, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Here's another one from Brokeback Boy that I wanted to bring up. Broke Neck Boy that I wanted to bring up that's been a hot topic of conversation lately.
Buy so hold, head coach Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Hall of Fame is lame.
I'll let you go first on this one, Trev.
Yeah, I mean, this is a buy for me. I mean, if Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer in the NFL, then there should be no coach ever for the rest of football that is a first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Like, I just don't know what if that doesn't get you on the first ballot, then I just don't know what does as a coach. Personally, I mean, that's the Patriots dynasty under Bill Belichick is one of the last 25 years, one of the most impressive sports like dynasties just in sports. And if the engineer of that is not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, then I just don't really know what we're doing here. Yeah, it was a rough look for the NFL. And like within a week, Bill Belichick is left off of the Hall of Fame list as a first ballot, and Shedeur Sanders makes the Pro Bowl. That's rough look for the NFL. That's not great. Yeah, I'm definitely buying that it's lame.
I don't know that I can buy, sell, or hold it because I think it's a little bit too nuanced for a buy, sell, or hold in just my personal view because the resume is that of a first ballot Hall of Famer. There's no doubt. Like what, second all time in wins, most playoff appearances, most Super Bowl appearances, most Super Bowl wins. I mean, he goes down as one of the greatest coaches ever just on the resume. I think where I'm sympathetic to some of the people that say, well, hold on a second, are the people that number one, his teams were very mediocre the minute Tom Brady left. And then Tom Brady goes to the Buccaneers and wins another Super Bowl. So I think there's some people say, well, should I give him credit for that? My counter to that is there was a stat I saw the other day is how many top 10 defenses Tom Brady had compared to like Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. And it was like he had way more. That's one. The other part is Spygate and Deflategate are two things that, right or wrong, give people ammo to tear down his success combined with what Brady did. Well, yeah, you won X amount of Super Bowls. You did Spygate. How long were you doing that? How long were you cheating? How long were you this? How long were you that? And then people say, well, like, notice when his coaches went other places, they never succeeded and they'd come back to New England and win again. Clearly there was something going on. That's what people will say. I don't know that I buy that. But it's not a whole lot different than people who say Jim Harbaugh's championship at Michigan is tarnished because they did it doing illegal things that gave them an unfair advantage. There's people who talk about how it always seemed a coincidence that, our headsets would go down at the weirdest times in the middle of games. There's coaches who have sworn that the Patriots had connected somehow to their signals. Now, some of that just could be you're getting your butt handed to you and you don't know how else to explain it, other than they had to know what we were doing. And maybe they did because they scouted so well. So I think that's where I think some of the pushback comes from, which is sort of like the baseball equivalent of Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens not being in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, you were great. No one denies that, but you cheated to get there. And I think that's the counter argument that I haven't really, I'm trying to work through as I really try to contemplate the legacy of Bill Belichick. Having said that, you've had 5 years to hash this out, because that's how long it takes for you to be out of the NFL. Isn't it 5 years? Do you have to be out 5 years, or is it 3 years in the NFL?
Yeah, it's 5 years.
You've had 5 years to hash this out. If this was something that was going to keep you from making him a first-team Hall of Famer, then I'd do it. So I think that an argument could be made that you could do that. But at the end of the day, do you know why I really think that he got kept out of the Hall of Fame? Because he wasn't nice to reporters. And this is their way of paying him back. They just don't vote him in, honestly, because he was never good to reporters. And so freaking what? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I wish Notre Dame treated us better. I'm not going to go hammer Marcus Freeman's legacy because I think his media policies suck, which I do. You know what I mean? That's childish and petty of me, not him, me. So I think that's part of it as well. And I think some of the people are using some of those other things to kind of, get back at him for being a bad interview and stuff like that. Like, I think some of that is just pettiness. But I do think that people that just dismiss the idea that should we have a greater conversation about the various cheating scandals that they had during his tenure and the role that might have played in his success, I think it's at least a conversation to have. But I just have a hard time believing that cheating leads to 7 Super Bowls. Because are you telling me the Patriots are the only team that ever tried to cheat? You know what I mean, Trev? Like, really? Like, they're cheating. You couldn't 7 Super Bowls and you couldn't figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of where I'm at. And so I would have him as a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I do think that there needs to be a greater conversation. We as fans need to be willing to have a greater conversation as to what are the things that should maybe lead us to having is it as cut and dry as it needs to be? I've said this. I view Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens very differently. They both used performance-enhancing substances. We agree on that, right? Everybody knows that. Nobody denies that. What I have said is, but I think Barry Bonds had a Hall of Fame resume before he started using steroids or whatever performance-enhancing things he used. I don't know that Roger Clemens was. Roger Clemens had like a really brief period of greatness with the Red Sox, and then he was kind of starting to wear down a little bit. I don't know for sure that his resume pre-steroids is Hall of Fame worthy. I would probably have it there. He had 3 20-plus win seasons and all that kind of stuff. But I think that's where some people are going to say is like, was his resume Hall of Fame worthy? And I think that's where those conversations should be had. But it's similar to me. It's you cheat this way with performance enhancing as a player. As a coach, you cheat by having an unfair advantage. and you can't deny that it doesn't give you an unfair advantage. I just have a hard time believing that you're going to win 7 Super Bowls simply by cheating. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like when players left, there'd be more people talking about stuff that was going on while they were there. If that was really going on over that long of a time. I have a hard time with that.
No,
so
I get that.
That's
completely.
kind of my 2 cents on that, Trev.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, for the cheating stuff, it's hard for me, and I have the same thought about like Michigan's. If nothing was going to be done at the time, then I don't think that you can then bring it back and say, "Well, do you remember he cheated?" It's like, but nothing happened. Like they still have the championships. So if it was really that egregious, then why are they still considered a 7-time Super Bowl champion winning organization since 2003 or whatever? That's my beef with it. It's the same thing with Michigan. It's like it shouldn't count. It's like, yeah, but it still does. Like I'm not saying that it should, but it's like take the action now. Like that's my biggest beef with the whole thing. Like that's what's so frustrating about the Michigan piece. It's like, well, we're gonna fine them. And it's like, I mean, cool, but now they can still count it. And Michigan fans absolutely still do. It's like, but you're gonna wait until he's up for election for the Hall of Fame and like that's the get back. I think that's a little weird, but and that's not me saying I don't think that it happened because there's obviously something fishy going on. But to your point, for all 7, like,
I mean, they were basically punished for it. So clearly the NFL found evidence. They lost draft picks, got fined and all that. But it's like, does that really explain all 7? I think it's it's that plus Brady winning and Belichick doing nothing once Brady left, combined with him being a not media friendly guy. I think all of it kind of adds together for them to basically say, we're going to get you back. And then he'll be in next year. But I'm more mad that Mike Shanahan's still not in. That's still my bigger beef. And then this will probably push Shanahan back another year. I think Mike Shanahan should be in the Hall of Fame for the job he did as a coordinator and as a head coach. And he had a pretty darn good record against Bill Belichick, by the way.
Super chat from CJ Carr Heisman. Appreciate the super chat. Would you like to see the old green jerseys make a comeback? Also, will there be a Shamrock series in 26?
Yes, that will be the Wisconsin game. Will be the Shamrock game. Old green jerseys. I mean, we're talking from the 70s. I was never a fan. I think that because they had that like yellow on them. Like, I like them. I like the green jerseys we've seen recently with the white, and I think those are better.
Yeah, I guess it just depends on what old green jerseys you're talking about. Like if you're talking about like the 05 USC ones, I would enjoy to see those make a comeback.
I think it's the ones that we saw from the 70s. The old ones are like the ones they wore in 07 against USC.
Oh yeah, no, those are ugly.
Yeah, first Notre Dame game was those flipping uniforms.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, that was not fun. We had a super chat from Rubes0513. He put that super chat in, and then the question came as follows.
Have you thought about which games you will tailgate this year? Would really like to meet you guys.
So, yes, the one for sure that we'll do is Miami. That one we'll definitely do. We're contemplating doing 1 or 2 against Rice and Michigan State. We may do 2. I was talking to my mom about this. We're thinking about a couple things. We're thinking about doing just 2 smaller tailgates for Rice and Michigan State, which obviously 3:30 games, you can't do as much. My mom's talked about like kind of doing like a breakfast thing, since we'll get there early and having like, sauce, biscuits and gravy, and then some different breakfast items. And then as we get closer to the game, have sandwiches and stuff like that. The other thing I've thought about doing is having a tailgate for Michigan State, and then the Friday night before Rice, which is the home opener, maybe doing some kind of get together the Friday night before, renting out a place and making some food and hanging out and doing something like that, or finding a place to meet up. So those are the 2 things I'm thinking about doing. But I'm pretty confident in saying we'll do something for Miami. The others are still kind of works in progress. Just depends on the availability of my parents to get down here for that.
From Irish Lions, prayers to Coach Lou. What are your top 3 favorite moments or quotes of Coach Holtz?
So obviously I haven't spoken a whole lot about the reports about him being in hospice because I just don't know enough about it to know, is this in response to an injury he had? Is it a response to him kind of end of life care? I just don't know enough about it. And I don't like speculating on things like that, but I will answer this one. What are your 3 favorite moments, quotes of Lou Holtz? Obviously the most iconic quote he ever made, in my opinion, was the save Jimmy Johnson's butt for me. But the one that I love the most, that is my favorite, is the one where he says, it was before, I think, the first Michigan game. It's this long speech he gave. I'll put it on the board. I can't play it here because it'll demonetize our show, but let me see here. Let me see if I can find it and I can at least read it. What did Lou Holtz say? Did Lou Holtz say before the Michigan game in 1986? But he had this great long quote, and I actually put it. I put it in the at the beginning of a highlight film before, and here's some of the things from that quote. It's first locker room speech. He says, this is my favorite. This is, I believe, before the Michigan game in 1986. He says, in the football game, we want to keep our poise. Poise is just having confidence in yourself and what you're doing. We are not going to mouth off, push or shove ever at Notre Dame. We're going to wait until the ball snapped. We're going to put a Rydell, it's a helmet, on somebody, and we're going to be the most physical football team in the country until the whistle blows. We want to win for one thing, and it's the first thing we've ever had. We said we were going to bring respect. Don't talk about it. There's only one way you get respect, and that's by looking someone in the eye for 60 minutes. Go out there and hitch up your trousers and say, hey, baby, here I am now. Let me see you run through me now. Let me see you show some disrespect for me when I'm nose on your nose. Let me see what you think of me now that my face is to you. We talk about respect. We talk about respect around the country. It's a game of who's going to flinch first, who's going to give up. We know that isn't going to be Notre Dame. Notre Dame football is nothing more than toughness, togetherness, intensity, intelligence, and competitiveness. And then he goes on to say a lot of other things, which I just thought was absolutely brilliant. And when you hear him say it, it's just like, dude, how do you not want to go, like, right now at my age, run through a wall? And then you guys won't see me for a few weeks because I'll be hospitalized, but I'll still try. You know what I mean? That's probably my favorite all-time Lou Holtz quote. My favorite Lou Holtz moment is him getting carried off the field after winning the championship in 1988. Those are my 3 that come to mind. I'll have to send that. Have you ever heard that pregame speech, Trev?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great one. I'm going to put it on the board.
No, that speech is fantastic. Love that one. The other one, my grandma actually used to tell me, which I loved. It was life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. When I talk about like problems. So big fan of that one too. But outside of that, it's just kind of the usual ones that everybody has heard. The save Jimmy Johnson's thing for me. I get that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. See any super chats? Yeah, we got one more down here from CJ Carr Heisman.
Oh, we got that one.
We did? Oh, yeah,
that's the old green jerseys. And yeah.
Yep. All right, let me get some more here from some people we have not gotten to yet. Here we go, from Domer Grizz.
Getting into part 2 of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's the Friday free-for-all mailbag. We got Domer Grizz getting us kicked off here in part 2 of the mailbag. What has been the biggest surprise of the offseason so far?
I don't know that I found anything to be incredibly surprising in this from the standpoint of like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Like, did I know that Mike Mickens was going to leave when I found out he left? No. Was I surprised by it? No. Did I know that Al Washington was going to leave for the Dolphins? I had been given a heads up that was a possibility. Was I surprised when I was told that? No. That's part of the business. You know, Josh Burnham leaving, was I surprised by that? No. Disappointed, yes. Surprised, no. yeah, I just don't know that I have that to me that there's been a lot of surprises of the offseason for Notre Dame.
I got
I
got two. Both of them are actually positive. One, I was very surprised that the offensive line didn't lose anybody to the portal. Like that actually surprised me. Not one. And then Jason Onya getting a 6 year of eligibility. Andy Milton fan beat me putting it into the chat, but just because that was out of like Notre Dame's hands, essentially. Like that was just kind of up to the NCAA to make the right decision and grant a kid like that another year. And that surprised me too. Those are probably my two biggest.
I dig those.
From Jimmy James, what do you think of Jason Candle as a head coach? What type of success do you think he will have at UConn?
That I don't know. And look, I've always been kind of high on Jason Candle. I think in recent years they haven't been as good at Toledo as I thought they would be, but even still, their recent years are 8-5 and 8-4. With last 2 years, they were 11-3 in 2023, 9-5 in 2022. So they haven't had quite the same success that I thought they had. I think the NIL era has made it a little bit tougher to develop young players and then keep young players the way that he was able to do early on. I think he's a pretty good offensive mind. How will he do at UConn? It's a great question. At the end of the day, it's going to be determined a lot by what kind of support he gets. The thing about it, though, is he's an Ohio guy through and through. I mean, he played high school football in Ohio. He played college football in Ohio. I believe he actually might have played his first 2 years in Pennsylvania, then transferred to Mount Union, which is in Ohio. Then his coaching career was literally at two places. He was at Mount Union from 03 to 08, and then he was at Toledo either as an assistant coach or head coach from 2009 to 2025. How's he going to do in Connecticut, recruiting the East Coast areas that he hasn't recruited as much? I have no idea. But I think he's a quality football coach, and I think he can bring a level of consistency to a program. How will he recruit to UConn? That's my question. I think his teams will be well coached, relatively well coached. I think he'll make good hires. How will he recruit that area? What consistency will he be able to bring? I mean, he's going to get some more support at UConn than he will at Toledo, but he's also going to play a little bit of a tougher schedule than he did at Toledo as well. Not by a ton, but he's a good football coach. Yeah, I think that hire makes a lot of sense for UConn.
From Battle in the Trenches, where would you rank the Notre Dame linebacker room? I mean, from top to bottom across the country, I put it at first. Like I said before, I don't think there's a single team in the country, at least not one that I've found, especially one that's competing for a national title, that returns every single linebacker that was in the rotation. I mean, think about this. The Notre Dame linebacker rotation has only lost one guy in the last 2 years in Jack Kaiser. I think that's crazy. Drake comes back, Jay Nosberry comes back, Jalen Sneed comes back, Kingston Viliamahasa comes back, and then you essentially in the rotation replace Jack Kaiser, who's a great leader, great player, with an exceptional athlete, Madden Faremo. I just don't know what other linebacker. Now, are there individual linebackers across the country that you could put above a Drake or above a Kingston? I think you could debate that. I don't know if I would. But as a room as a whole, it's the number one room in the country.
I want to respond to this because people keep asking about this. Jay Valai reportedly just signed a much bigger contract at OU. Not really. It was a $30,000 pay raise. Does this further complicate our search for Mike Mickens' replacement? First of all, I've never said that they were going to hire Jay Valai. This is why I don't comment on these things. Until somebody is signed, it doesn't matter. I don't think him signing an extension with Oklahoma the day that everybody else on the staff gets new contracts announced is the same as Oklahoma re-signing him after getting overtures from Notre Dame. They literally announced the entire staff's new contracts. So he can sign a contract with Oklahoma, and if Notre Dame gives him terms that he finds agreeable, then he can leave for Notre Dame if that's what he so chooses. But this is exactly why I don't waste time talking about who the next hire will be, and I'll just discuss who the hire is when they make it. Because there's this constant up and down. this person reaches out. I was told by a good source that there's no more than 3 or 4 like legit names on the board. Yet I've heard from other sources of like 9 or 10 different names. Like, so some of y'all are lying to me, or not lying to me. Some of y'all are giving me bad information. Some of it is agents putting things out there because they want to have Notre Dame's name associated with certain players and things like that, or certain coaches so that they can negotiate pay raises and all this kind of stuff. But this is exactly why I don't talk about this kind of stuff, because you don't know what's going to happen until the ink is dry on the contract. But no, I don't think that the contracts that were announced today by a state school of the entire coaching staff means that he can't now come to Notre Dame. That's just not how it works in the coaching profession. So if anything, this is, if he really wants to be at Notre Dame, this could be just another bargaining tool to get something. So I know that other people are talking about it, and that's fine. I'm not begrudging anyone else for how they decide to cover the team. That's their right. That's their privilege. And I'm not upset about it. But this is why I've chosen to cover these things the way that I have, because this is exactly why I don't get into it. This is the name, and everybody's been talking about it for 3 days. And now what if it does mean that he's not coming to Notre Dame now? So what did we just waste the last 3 days talking about? So people say, well, why won't you let this be discussed on your board? Like, this is exactly why. Because we don't know what's going to be. So we waste 3 days talking about a guy when we could just wait till he's announced, and then we have plenty of time to talk about him. But otherwise, we're just wasting time on something we think may happen as opposed to what we know. And so whether or not I leak a name to you that I heard or not has no bearing on whether or not Marcus Freeman is going to hire a guy or whether or not that guy is going to sign to Notre Dame. It just creates unnecessary conversation. And this is exactly how it always goes. I say, hey, I heard about this guy, and then he ends up not going. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you look like I thought you said they were going to hire so-and-so. I never said that. And this is the first time his name has come out of my mouth in any kind of public setting. I haven't written his name on the board or anything like that. So this is why I've said this. And there's things I've been told the last couple of days that made me think this deal might get done, but there were some holdups to make us think that, it may not be. So I think this is why Notre Dame doesn't like this stuff to get out. And this is why I don't report on this stuff, because now it's going to look like if they don't sign him, Notre Dame missed, and now whoever they get, some secondary guy they didn't want. And this is why I just think some of these things are a bit of a waste of time. So I could get clicks for talking about it and bringing up names, but what if he decides not to come? So what did we waste that time on? So people keep asking about it. But this is why we don't talk about it. So y'all can stop asking me who I think they should hire. I'm not going to tell you. I've said I'm not going to tell you because it doesn't matter, because who I think they should hire is not going to have any bearing on who Marcus Freeman hires. And if I give you 3 or 4 names and he hires somebody outside those 3 or 4 names, then it gets turned into people being upset of who he hired because that wasn't a guy that we all thought that they were going to get. And we got excited about this guy, and they didn't hire that guy. Then the guy they do hire is somebody that we get disappointed by. If it's not a good hire, I'll tell you it's not a good hire. If it's a good hire, I'll tell you it's a good hire. And then we have all off season to talk about that guy instead of wasting our time talking about a guy that we don't even know is going to get the job or not. And I've spent the last several minutes talking about this, and that's more time than I wanted to. But I kept seeing it in the chat, people talking. And I'm like, this is why I've never mentioned his name. Because what's the point? So I've made some decisions with how we run our business the last year or so that we're just not going to do the soap opera stuff as much as there is, because of this right here. I can't control it. And then something happens, and I'm not saying they're not going to get him either. But what I'm saying is, until a contract has been agreed upon and signed, all of this is, we're just kind of wasting our time. And so that's why I will ask you guys to stop asking me who I think they should hire. I'll have plenty of discussions to have once they make a hire, whether it's praising the hire or telling you it's okay, but I've got some concerns, like we did with Chris Ash. Could be good, but I've got some concerns. Or I think this is a bad hire, which I've also had no problem saying in the past as well. and we'll still do the same now.
Super chat from ND Milton fan. Appreciate you. Is there a better turnaround story than Jordan Botelho? To be honest, I never thought JB would finish, let alone graduate and totally transform himself.
I think there have been better turnaround stories. But as far as like, I mean, it's up there. ND Milton fan. I'm with you. I never thought he would graduate from Notre Dame, much less play 5 years at Notre Dame. And it took a lot of growing up and hard work for him to get to this point. So yeah, it's a great story. It's absolutely a great story. No question. This actually made me laugh. I wasn't laughing at you reading this question, Trev. This one popped up from Catfish Kelly's Dirty Plunger when you were reading that one. He says, "So Brian, are you saying you're going to tell us?" LOL, JK. It's very well played, my friend. Very well played. Thank you for that. So, and I also never said they were close to deal with someone. I said that they were working close to deal, and I said there's still work to be done. Never said his name. I never said anything of the sort. I said at the point of that post was not to say this is going to get done. The point is money is not going to be an issue, and I'm excited that Notre Dame is willing to spend the money and do whatever they need to do financially to make a hire work. But it's not always about money. So no, I did not say that. You're misquoting me. And that's another reason why, like, I'd say one thing about it, and then somebody misquotes what I said, and it's just further evidence of this is why I just won't say anything on it in the future, because this always happens. People twist what you say, and that's just how it always goes, unfortunately. And that's one of the reasons I just don't do it anymore. We were talking about this earlier, Trev, and I wanted to kind of share my thoughts on it. I'm with you as a traditionalist. I understand why the ACC is doing more Friday games and Thursday games, because they're just not a popular brand right now, and they're trying to get themselves out there. But I kind of feel like this is all sort of going down Maction territory, where you're now admitting that we're a subpar brand. So there's two ways on it. All I'll say is Notre Dame better not be playing on Thursdays and Fridays outside of week one. The week one or week 0 is the only time I'm ever okay Notre Dame not playing on a Saturday during the season. So this better not become like a thing where like Notre Dame's playing Duke on a Friday night. That will make me very unhappy.
Same.
And very, very unhappy. All right, let's get down to some more. Here we go.
From Jay Melvin, I was watching Lucky Lefty last night, and Malik said one of his concerns was the roster being over bloated with too much talent and not everybody being played. What's your opinion on this, Coach?
Well, I can't speak directly to what Malik said because I didn't listen to it. I'll just respond to the notion of, can a roster be too big? Can a roster be too big from a standpoint of it's detrimental to your roster of how you play in practice? Not really. I mean, I've coached on teams with 150 to 200 kids on it. You've got to have a deeper staff, and coaching staffs are more geared towards being able to coach those. Joe Rudolph's not doing it by himself anymore. You know, Charlie Partridge won't be doing it by himself anymore. He'll have, Nick Sebastian. Joe Rudolph has Rob Delaney, who I've heard very good things about as a young coach. So it's different there, where I think the challenge is, and maybe this was Malik's point, again, I don't know. I do think that sometimes you can have too many talented players in a room where guys who aren't playing get upset. There's beef in the room. Guys' attitudes aren't, the greatest, and there's some drama, and not everybody's bought in, and it just kind of can bring the culture of the room down. That's always a concern, but that can be handled through recruiting and not making promises that you can't keep, not promising kids that they're going to play and then they don't. As long as you are still investing the time in the young people, then I think you can eliminate some stuff. That's kind of where I think this boils down to, Trev, is that can be an issue if not handled correctly. So does having 20 offensive linemen on scholarship, is it a problem? Not in and of itself. Because you can coach all those kids with Rob Delaney. I'm sure there's other guys that they'll have working with it. You can work with them all. Can it become an issue because there's 5 playing, there's 5 in the 2 deep, and then the other 10 are just not to be heard from, and then that creates some issues in the locker room? It can, but that's why your coaching staff needs to make sure they're still investing in those young men, and that's why your team leadership needs to be able to be prepared to handle those moments when those things come. So it can be an issue. It's not guaranteed that it's going to be an issue. So if that's what it comes down to for Malik, that he's concerned about that is a fair criticism, not criticism, but concern to raise. And that's why the team leadership and the coaching leadership needs to make sure that they have plans in place for that. Hey, there's a chance these really talented freshmen aren't going to play as much as they wanted to. You got to start dealing with that day one. You don't wait till week 3 when they're grumpy to deal with that. That's when it becomes a problem. Like, think about like Tennessee, how some of the beef in the locker room, and was it 22 or 23 about what guys were making and things like that, started causing all these problems. When not everybody's going in the same direction, that's when a locker room can have the drama that tears the team apart. You think about the women's basketball team a couple years ago and some of the things we heard about the beef that was going in the locker room. So the team reaches number 1 and then they're out by the Sweet 16 and they didn't look the same in the last 2 months of the season. And there are reports of, they didn't get along. That stuff can have an impact. And if that's what Malik is referring to, then that's a genuine concern of any team that's very deep in a position. But it's something that if the coaching staff and the leadership of the team handles correctly, it won't be a problem. It may be a problem with a player or two, but it doesn't become that cancer in the locker room that can tear a team down. So, Jay Melvin, you tell me if I'm kind of close to what Malik was talking about or not. If that is, then I think that's a fair concern. If it's something else where, like, you can't coach everybody, that was true when Malik played and when I played, because you can only have 9 coaches and your GAs. But now that you've got the 10 coaches plus your 4 GAs plus analysts can now be on the field, it's way easier to handle a bigger position group. It's not, like I said, not just Joe Rudolph coaching 20 guys. He's got a good GA. I don't know if Coach Delaney's a GA or an analyst. Doesn't matter anymore. He can now work with the O-line. And Trev, you saw it last year. There's times when Joe Rudolph is working with one group and he's got Rob Delaney over here working with the other group, and they're coaching him up. He's coaching them up. He's working with them. When you've got that kind of assistant, it's a lot easier to handle a bigger roster. But you're just going to need that at, O-line, receiver, D-line, linebacker, DB, all of that. You're going to need to expand the staff. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, my biggest concern with having a roster that is too bloated with a lot of talent, my concern doesn't lie anywhere on Notre Dame's coaching staff. It's just with the state of college football. It's not like what it used to be where you can just load up on talent and you just know that they're going to be back year over year. That time has changed. And Notre Dame had a very loaded roster in 2025. Us talking about Notre Dame having a top 20 or a top 5 roster in college football was not just specific to 2026. We also said that going into 2025. And they kept their portal losses to a minimum from an impact standpoint. Players that were going to make an immediate impact. The Blair one hurts for what it meant down the road. And if he had a big offseason this year, obviously Josh Burnham hurt. But outside of that, you were losing a lot of guys that really just weren't going to play in 2026. So as long as they keep those losses to a minimum, that's where my concern would be. I have no idea if that's what Malik was talking about. But for me specifically, my concern is just with the state of college football, not Notre Dame's ability to manage that roster, if that makes sense. So that's
I think that kids can leave now earlier, but that doesn't have anything to do with, like, to me, during the season. My concern would be during the season, if guys aren't getting enough touches, aren't getting enough playing time, how do you keep that from being a problem during that season? And that is something where coaches have a big say in that. If you're not honest with the guy, if you don't communicate with the guy, if you bring this big time player and you don't talk to him all season because he's now on scout team, that guy's going to be pissed off and leave, and it might create issues in the locker room. That's where coaches have a big say in this, where, even now you have kids that will choose to stay, be backups for another year because there's an honest communication. There's a plan for development. They know that an opportunity is going to come down the road. And I especially think for Notre Dame, who's not a school that just goes out and brings in 20 portal guys a year, there's a level of trust that, hey, I'm going to get my shot. But once you stop talking to a kid, you don't coach a kid, you don't deal with the kid, you don't have a relationship with his family, then you can have those issues come up. So I do think that coaching still has a big say in it, Trev. But I would even argue, especially now in this portal era, where kids can just up and leave and everybody wants their immediate gratification. But that's also why I partly think how you recruit kids is important. Don't promise a kid playing time. If you got to promise a kid playing time that you can't guarantee he's going to play, then that's on you. And if you need to guarantee that for him to come, then you've lied to the kid. Because it's very rare that you're going to be able to recruit a kid to a place like Notre Dame or Georgia and guarantee that he's going to play as a freshman for 25 snaps a game. That's bad recruiting. And I don't know that Notre Dame has done that. I haven't heard them do that. But that's where coaching, I think, has a big say in the whole thing. And it looks like we're kind of on track of what he was saying too. So good stuff. We have some more from our guy, Salty Virginia Peanuts.
Dabo Swinney invited other coaches to follow his lead in calling out tampering. Will coaches more junior than he does do so, or are potential future career risks too high?
No, I mean, I don't think other head coaches speaking out is going to put them at risk. I mean, you know what though? Even if it does, like, be a man. You either believe in something. Like, here's the thing: if you don't think this is right, speak up on it. If you don't think it's right that someone else does it, but you're willing to do it, then shut your mouth. But I'm so tired of people unwilling to speak the truth because they're afraid of repercussions. I just have a hard time accepting that. There's a right and a wrong way to do it, but you've got to be able to speak your mind about what you believe to be the truth. I keep almost saying your truth. That's not what I'm trying to say. I've made my opinion very clear on that. But there's way too many coaches and ADs and presidents that are just sitting back allowing things to happen that they don't believe in, and they're like, well, it's just the way it is now. Well, it's because you allow it to be that way. And if more coaches, especially coaches with power and authority, were willing to say that, but you know why they can't? Because a lot of them are cheating as well. And so they can't say something. Well, like, I did exactly what he did, so I can't say anything. Because then they're going to come here and, look at the skeletons in my closet, and then we're in trouble. So I do wish there were more coaches. And, not even coaches. Dabo as a head coach has the authority to do that. But do you know who should be doing it at other schools? Athletic directors, presidents. That's who really needs to be speaking about this, because ultimately they have the authority. If you're asking your head coach to be like, what I liked about the Clemson thing? Everybody showed the picture of Dabo. He did all the talking because he's the face of Clemson. But you know who was sitting right to his left at the podium? The AD. Sitting right there saying, hey, I got your back. So, yes, we need more men to be men in this country in so many different ways, and that's absolutely true in college football. If you believe something is wrong, have the balls to say it. And if it means maybe I don't get this job or that job, is it right or is it wrong? And what kind of legacy do you want to leave your children that, hey, it's okay to keep your mouth shut about something you know to be wrong if it benefits you? Like, that is so, anti what this country's supposed to be about. And this isn't a right or left. This is something we should all be able to agree on. If something's wrong, speak up. Do it the right way, but speak up. And there's too many men that are like, hey, I'm too comfortable. I don't want to mess up my thing, so I'll just let it happen. And I get sick of that. And I know that's me, on my soapbox again and ranting again, but I just believe that's who we are. And look, you don't think I caught blowback in 2020 when I spoke my mind about things I was willing to do and not do that they were trying to make everybody else do? I caught a lot of blowback for that from Notre Dame, from fans, from friends, from family, but it was the right thing. It's what I believed. And there's just too many people that are unwilling to do that, in my opinion, especially older men and people with authority, people that could make a difference. Like the head coach at Fresno State speaking up is changing nothing. A bunch of people, Dabo, Kirby, Saban, Freeman, Ryan Day, James Franklin, Brent Venables, Steve Sarkisian. If those people all start talking, then maybe something gets done. And if the ADs and presidents of those schools, maybe something gets done. But there's too many people, there's too many cowards right now, in my opinion. Too many people that are unwilling to put their necks on the line for fear of it might put them in a position where they could lose out on financial opportunities. And I have no use for those kind of people. And I don't. Especially people in positions of authority. You know, like I can somewhat understand it if you're a guy who's barely getting by trying to feed your wife and kids. I can somewhat understand that. But when people who are in positions where they have authority, I don't have sympathy for those people. That's head coaches, ADs, and presidents. I have no sympathy for their lack of spine. None whatsoever. So I hope that Dabo Swinney stepping up causes other coaches to say, now that one of the big dogs of this profession has said this, that gives me now the ability to go out and say it as well. But you better have a conversation with your AD, because you're going to need your AD to be right where Dabo's AD was during that press conference, which is right there beside him. Because if you're doing it and your AD's not in the room, that means he's too scared to be right by your side, which means if people push back on him, he's going to then throw you under the bus. And yeah, that's where we are. It frustrates the heck out of me.
I just wanted to be followed up by action. You can tell me whatever you want to. But I don't care about this, Salty. Like, if I'm just being real, you could say whatever you want to. I watched Notre Dame's athletic director go on a basically 3-day media tour, talk about how he was mad at what the ACC did to Notre Dame. Where are we at right now? So you could say what you want.
Well, but Dabo has. I mean, they've submitted stuff to the NCAA. They followed it with action, 100%. And
yeah, I'm not saying that he wasn't.
About. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. When you're going to speak your mind, your AD's got to be, because you are doing something about it. Because what did Dabo do? Dabo didn't say, this is generally speaking wrong. What I'm talking about, what Dabo did, is not the general, well, we have a problem in college football we need to fix. I'm sick of hearing that, because everybody says that. Dabo got up there saying, this dude right here, Pete Golding, Ole Miss, Austin Thomas, this is what they did. Here's the receipts. Here's what we're going to do about it. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, every coach says, oh, this is bad, we got to fix. That's nothing. I don't want to hear jack about that if that's what you're talking about. But what Dabo did is different, which is why I think we should care, because he is doing what we're saying, which is action. I'm saying it. I'm calling names out, and here's what we're going to do, and here's what we've submitted to the NCAA, and we're not holding back. This isn't right. And now it's up to the NCAA to do something about it. I can't control that. That's what makes this very different, in my opinion.
I was not saying that Dabo was not doing that. I was saying that, like, inviting other coaches to call it out. I mean, they've done that, and I don't care about that. It's the action that follows. I know Dabo has followed it up with action. That's why I care about it. But just having other coaches follow you isn't just enough. Like, you have to then implement it into action. That was my point. It wasn't contrary to what you were saying.
What do you mean? I'm not arguing. I'm asking you to clarify. Like what are you like? So your coaches, other coaches doing what Dabo did. When you say I want to see action, are you referring to them or are you referring to the NCAA?
No, I'm referring to other coaches, because I'm answering Salty's question, and it says, will they follow his lead in calling it out? I'm simply saying it's not enough to call it out. Mm-hmm. What I was going to go on to say was that they have to do what Dabo did and follow it up with action. But I don't care. Just other coaches being like, I also disagree. It's like, yeah, that does nothing if you don't follow it up with action. That's right. That's what I'm saying.
And that's what I'm saying is they need to do that. Like, that's what I want to see. I want to see people getting on there in press conference saying, this is what, like, Fresno's doing that, right? Like, Fresno, they haven't commented on it, which I actually kind of like, because Fresno has not had a press conference. What they did is like, hey, we've reported this to the NCAA because Pete Golding did the same exact thing to us, which is kind of like now somebody wrote this, Trev. Somebody put like, so y'all know it's about to happen, right? They're going to go after Ole Miss for the stuff that Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and are doing because Ole Miss is Ole Miss and they're not Texas and Georgia and all, you know what I mean? But the other reason they're going after Ole Miss is because a coach had the balls to get up there and say, Ole Miss, Pete Golding, Austin Thomas, they did this, they did this, they did this, and here's what we're doing. So to me, when I look at this, when I talk about calling out tampering, it's not just it's not the same as what all the coaches do, which is because, like, to your point, I get so sick of the crying about the state of the game. The general crying about the state of the game. Oh, woe is us. And this. I am sick of that. What makes what Dabo did and what I think Salty is saying other coaches need to do is not the general crying about it. It's this is what's going on. This isn't right. Because there's kind of two types of tampering. One is allowed and one is not. And which is what makes it hard because it's like, wait a minute, can we speak on this? Because we did this. We convinced this kid to jump in the portal and got this kid. So, like, who has the ability to do that? That's different than saying, like, okay, a kid has already signed somewhere and you're personally reaching out to the kid, not the agent, to try to do that. That's a different type of tampering that Dabo's like, no, that ain't going to happen. So when you put names, that's what Dabo did. That's what coaches need to do. And if you're saying that, then we agree. But that's not what Dabo did. He put names to it. He's got receipts. Fresno State has receipts. Because what hurt Fresno is the kid what hurt Ole Miss is the kid they tried to flip from Ole Miss or from Fresno, he didn't leave. So, like, they have more. You know what I mean? Like, hey, coach, here's the receipts. I'm not going anywhere. Where, you know, the worst part, and this agents are already scummy enough, in my opinion. But when the agent basically is like, I'll give you the text if you give us another year and $1 million, like, dude, you suck. You're the worst. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to throat punch that guy so bad. You know, but that's what I love that Dabo did, and I hope that more people are willing to do that. And that's why I'm hammering Jim Phillips so much. Where was he this whole thing with Miami and Duke? Where was he? Like, where was he in all this? We haven't even heard reports of him even talking to people about it. Like, I don't care if he has a press conference about it. Where are your conversations with Dan Radicavich at Miami? Hey, man, this isn't right. You're hurting another institution. Why? Because Jim Phillips doesn't care. I'd rather Miami be good than Duke be good. Because that's better for us. It makes us more money. Even though Duke just won your freaking league. So, yeah. That's what I'm sick of. That cowardice is what I'm sick of. So, it's frustrating. I was really trying to not have any rants today, Trev. It was really a goal of mine.
From Coleman Smith.
Mailbag. What are the odds that you're not going to do a rant on the mailbag?
Hey, you said
you
it,
were thinking it.
I sure
was. Hey, Trev, I just got done saying people need to have the stones to speak their minds. You're like, no, but you said the right way. You said do it the right way. Fair.
From Coleman Smith, Football 101 question. I'm curious about when do receivers know when to cut off routes? Are they built into the play or just when plays break down?
So I'm taking him saying cut off routes, meaning like break off the route. Are you reading that the same way? Not cutting like on the top end of a hitch, the top end of a speed cut. Are you talking about breaking off a route? If that's what you're referring to, it's usually when you see the quarterback move laterally. When a quarterback climbs in the pocket, you keep doing what you're doing. You stay on your route. So what that means is when a quarterback drops back, climbing the pocket means he steps up. If he does that, you keep running your route because he's going to step up and potentially throw or scramble. When a quarterback breaks the pocket laterally, the play is basically dead. The minute you see a quarterback break the pocket, not slide step, but like he is out of the pocket, that's when you break your route off and you do whatever your taught rules are. Some teams, low guy goes high guy goes low. So basically, if you're running a deep route, you come here. Short guys turn and run. Guys from the backside keep working over on the plane. You basically say, stay on the level you're at, keep working across, try to get in the quarterback's line of sight. Is a general rule of what teams will do. So that's when it is, Coleman, when a quarterback laterally escapes the pocket or gets out of his throwing stance. That's it. Like, so if a guy turns left and slides, but he still got his shoulder, then you keep running your route. But once he turns to like get away or spins out, you're breaking your route off and getting into your scramble rules. That's how that works.
Sometimes it depends on what kind of quarterback you have too. Like in 2024, when you have a mobile quarterback like Riley, you kind of just turn to block. We saw that a lot last year. It's you immediately go to start blocking. And then with a guy like CJ, you kind of have to keep your head on the swivel because the ball might be coming your way. So sometimes it depends on who's under center.
That's true. Well, and the other thing too is if you have a quarterback like a John Elway, a lot of times the guys that are deep just kind of float because they're like, I can get the ball. No, you keep going. You get over, you get behind the defense. So like if you're a backside guy and you're deep, you're running a backside post, climb if you've got that big arm quarterback because he can get it behind everybody. If you've got Danny Warfel, come back to the ball. You know what I mean? Because he's got a different kind of arm talent.
Yeah. One of the best scramble drill plays I've seen from a wide receiver was DeVaris Daniels in 2012 against Pitt. Golson broke the pocket. He broke outside. And he ran a deep curl and then got behind the defense because Golson had one of those arms where he could get you the football.
Yeah. Was that the one he completed like down near the 5? Is that that one? Yeah.
Followed it up with the touchdown to Theo Riddick.
Everett could throw it really far.
Dude had a
really far.
A rope.
Yep. Here's an interesting one, Trev. I'll ask this one. I'll ask this one because I want you to answer it first. Salty Virginia Peanut says, is there any aspect of linebacker coaching that Notre Dame should upgrade when choosing the next linebacker coach?
That's tough. Max Bullitt did a great job. If there's one thing, it would just be a better feel for space when playing zone. That's just me. I think Drake Bowen is a very underrated player when it comes to coverage. And we've talked on shows before about how there's been other coaches talking about how they also undervalued what his abilities were in coverage. But by and large in the room, if I break it down from player to player, it would be finding ways of making Jalen Snead a more well-rounded linebacker, not so much a niche player. Now, when you're going on your 5th year of college football, sometimes players just are who they are. But I would say with how much zone that Chris Ash likes to implement, I would say just a more enhanced feel for space when playing in coverage. Matt Faramo naturally has that. He's the one that broke up the pass against Purdue, tipped it up, and Christian Gray got an interception. So some players have that naturally. Others need like taken a little bit more under their wing. Jaden Osbury, for all the great things that he does, he's somebody that could have a better feel for space when playing zone. Not to say that any of them do it poorly, but that would probably be something. But outside of that, there's nothing that I'm not picking on tackling or, maybe increasing like some sort of a pass rushing arsenal, like maybe something like that. But biggest
winning
thing
as pass rushers, I think, is what you're saying. Like, sometimes it's okay not to just blow up the running back. Sometimes are you going to try to win, knowing the difference and then having the hand technique to do that. I think a big one is recruiting. I think Max Bullough was a solid recruiter, but I think a lot of the recruiting success has more to do with Marcus Freeman than it did necessarily Max Bullough. And that's understandable because Max is still learning as a coach. And I think a lot of the technical stuff, we saw improvement, but I do think that there are some pass game things, Trev, that we need to see them do a better job of teaching. If you're going to get depth on a pass route, look, I understand, but you've got to have some situational awareness. On 3rd and 13, you don't drop to 15. Like that, just that's got to be something that's emphasized. Know where you are. On 3rd and 17, you might drop to 13, 15. On 3rd and 13, you don't drop to 15. Like there was some, like I think you said spatial awareness is I think the phrase you used. I think that's definitely an area where they can improve as a unit in that regard. There was growth. Drake Bowen's gotten better every year, but as a unit, I think that's definitely something that they can improve upon. And that's why Notre Dame was a little bit more vulnerable to some of the in-breaking routes, no matter who was in a linebacker last season. Yeah. We had a super chat from Catfish Kelly's Dirty Plunger. He said, play the loose beats before every kickoff in the stadium all year. I think that's a great idea.
That'd be great.
I think that's amazing. Like, and I think they did this once recently, but as instead of like the dong, dong as the players are walking out, they should play that as the players are walking out of the locker room, ready to come out of the tunnel. Have that playing. That would be as like the lights are down. Now they dim the lights instead of like the bell thing. Play that Lou Holtz speech before every game as the players are coming out. That would be amazing. That would be electric for the crowd. And I got to think that might even hit some of the players. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely. That would be amazing. I'm literally getting goosebumps. I don't know if you can see. I'm literally getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like, literally, I've got goosebumps thinking about it. I don't know if you can see those or not, but like my hairy arms. But yeah, I literally got goosebumps thinking about playing that. I'd be outside for that every time.
Oh,
like leave the press box. I'm going outside on the outside area, and I want to feel the electricity in that stadium when that's going on. Playing that Lou Holtz speech before as they're walking out with the lights dimmed, bro. I'm ready to go play, Trev. I'm ready to go play right now.
Step on the helmet.
Yes,
get out there.
That would be amazing. It would be amazing.
From Irish Lions of the football program, if the football program had the support they do now at the end of Coach Holtz's career at Notre Dame, how different do you think the last 30 years go?
Oh, I think Notre Dame would have multiple national championships in the last 30 years. They'd have at least 2. Because I think if they supported the program then the way they do now, Bob Davie doesn't replace Lou Holtz, Barry Alvarez does. And I mean, you think about the success he had at Wisconsin. People don't understand, Trev. Wisconsin was an absolute joke of a program before Barry Alvarez took over. Like, they were terrible. And, this is a guy that during his career went 119-72, but he won 3 Rose Bowls. He had 3 top 10 finishes from 1993 to 1999. He went 1-10 in his first year in 1990. By year 4, they had won a Rose Bowl. And this is a team that was just like, I don't know if I've never told you this, but the first college football game I ever went to was a Wisconsin game. It was Ohio State, Wisconsin. When I was in the 5th grade, my 5th grade basketball coach, Dr. Flack, one of the nicest guys I've ever met. Him and his family, they had season tickets. They had 2 season tickets to Ohio State games. They were big Ohio State fans. And they couldn't go, and they knew I loved football, so they asked me and my dad if we wanted to go. I'm a Notre Dame fan, but like, heck yeah, I want to go to a Notre Dame game, a college football game. So the first game we ever went to was actually an Ohio State game against Wisconsin, and I think it was 89. I think it was the year before he took over, and like the 3 years before that, they were 3-8, 1-10, and 2-9. They had a coach in 86 who was there for 1 year, got fired. He went 3-9. The year before that, they were 5-6. Dave McClain, his tenure, they went 5-4-2, 4-7, 4-7, 7-5, 7-5, 7-4, 7-4-1, 5-6. Like, those were some of their better years. This takes you back to 1978. John Jardine was there for 8 years before that. 4-5, 4-5-1, 4-6-1, 4-7, 4-7, 7-4, 4-6-1, 5-6, 5-6. So we're talking about like the 15 years to 20 years before Barry Alvarez arrived. Their best season was like 7 wins. The guy before that, 0-9-1, 0-10, 3-7. Before that, it was. Let me see if the last time they had more than that. They had an 8-2 season and lost the Rose Bowl in 1962, lost the Rose Bowl in 1959, and 8 wins was like the best. From 1956 to when Barry Alvarez arrived, they had 1 season where they won more than 7 games. 1. I'm actually going back even a little bit further. Let's go back to 1949. There was only from 1949 to 1989, a stretch of 40 years. They had 1 season where they won more than 7 games. 1 season. Barry Alvarez, by his 4th year at Wisconsin, had won 10 games in a Rose Bowl and had 3 years of more than that. By his 5th year, they won 8 games, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2002, 2004, 2005. they won 8 or more games, something that in the previous 40 years they did once.
Dang.
So imagine that guy inheriting Lou Holtz's program in the 90s. So that's who they would have had. If they would have supported the program then the way they do now, I think they would have had at least 1 or 2 championships. I don't think we'd be sitting here with Trevor saying, like, I don't never experienced that in my life. Or I'd be sitting here saying, like, I haven't seen it since I was 10. I don't think we would be saying that. Yeah. So be nice, wouldn't it?
Just you're telling me. Yeah, that'd be great. I would love that.
Yeah.
I would absolutely love that. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, I was negative 9 years old the last time Notre Dame won a national.
You're just saying that to hurt me, aren't you? You're just saying that to hurt me. I was in double digits by then, Trev. You're just saying that to make me feel old, aren't you? I see how it is. Okay, I'm watching you, brother. Let me read this one because I want you to answer it first. Trev's buy-sell hold glasses. It's weird when you read Trev's buy-sell hold glasses.
Yeah.
As a fan, what was your favorite in-person moment in the stadium? Mine was Ben Koyak's end zone catch to beat Stanford. You got to put, when Trev's buy-sell hold glasses ask the questions, you've got to put Trev's buy-sell hold glasses on.
Yeah, have to.
Mine was Ben Koyak's end zone catch to beat Stanford in 2014, right in front of us in the student section. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's sick. Favorite moment in the stadium? The first game I ever went to was Notre Dame UCLA in 2006, and we sat in the end zone that Samardzija ran that touchdown in. I don't know if it beats that. And I've been to some crazy Notre Dame games. I've been to 2006 UCLA. I went to 2010 Utah. I went to 2012 Pitt. I was at the 2014 North Carolina game that ended like 50-42. And then I went to like 19 Boston College, and then I went to 22 Clemson. I was a season ticket holder for 23, so I was there for USC, Ohio State, all that. I don't really have a whole lot of favorite moments from Ohio State 23. And then I was at the playoff game in 24. But the first one, like, that was the game that made me the diehard fan that I am now. I mean, it's
game with Brady, the UCLA game.
Yeah, like that was a game that made me fall in love with football, and the game that made me fall in love with Notre Dame, because it was like being on that campus was electric. And then it was just, something that I got to share with just me and my pops. So that was that. It's probably that. Honestly, that was nuts.
Then mine is. I wasn't there for that. I was there for the 2014 touchdown pass. That was pretty cool. I've said my two are, I'd probably say Will Fuller's touchdown against USC in at 15 was a pretty amazing moment. The other one was being there. So where we were in the press box, Vince and I had stepped outside. We like to kind of watch the first couple series outside because I think part of evaluating the game is evaluating the environment that they're playing and things like that. And we were on. So we're watching the team is going right to left from the press box side against Indiana, and we're in the outside to the left, which means we're down by the end zone away from the Jeremiah Love touchdown run. So we're looking right at it from like end zone, basically kind of angle. And once he clears that safety, we're like, oh, he's gone. And then watching him run towards us, that while the crowd is just going nuts in the first ever college football playoff game in a home stadium at Notre Dame, that was pretty nuts. Wasn't that on the side of the field you guys were on too, Trev?
Yeah, we were. I was telling my dad, I was like, they're like Vince and Brian are just like above us.
Okay, so you saw the same angle we saw. That
sure
was
did.
Like that, and then watching the crowd just because the crowd saw it as soon as he cleared the safety, the crowd knew he's gone, like it's over, and just went nuts. That was a pretty cool moment too. So it'd be Fuller's the Kaiser to Fuller touchdown where he torched the Dory Jackson. And that one are the two that just kind of pop in my head first. I mean, there's got to be some others. Benjamin Morrison's pick six in 2022 was pretty awesome. EQ's blocked punt. What was that? That was also in the 15 game. when Equanimous blocked that punt, crowd went a little bit nuts. Trying to think of some others. There's been some pretty cool moments in that stadium, but yeah, that Chris Fink's touchdown against Michigan in 2018. That was a pretty awesome play.
I wish I was in person for that.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was pretty amazing. Yeah, there's been some pretty cool moments. Yeah, the second sack against Clemson in that overtime win. That crowd was like, that was when they knew, like, okay, we're going to win this thing. They were pretty hyped up on that one. That was a pretty cool play too. Because they were number one, right?
Yeah, Clemson was number one. Notre Dame was fourth, right?
Yeah. That was pretty awesome.
Hopefully there's going to be new memories made this year, man. Yes, they play Wisconsin. FanDuel already has the lines out for that game. It moved already. Notre Dame yesterday was favored by 17.5, and today they're favored by 16.5. So
okay,
not really sure
the uncertainty in the coaching staff is a point difference in the line. It would seem like Trev's Bicehold Glasses also asked, why did the Notre Dame administration stop supporting the football program at the end of Lou's tenure? Well, the people that ran the school at the time did not like the fact that Notre Dame's football team was considered bigger than the school. And that's really what it came down to. It's just snobbery. And a complete snobbery's that's what led to a complete lack of understanding of how vital the football program's success is to the institution in so many different ways, financially and all those different ways. I think that's really what it boiled down to is that they didn't like the fact, and especially during Vinny Serrato's tenure, they brought in some kids that maybe they shouldn't have brought in. And I'm not talking like the academic close kids like Sorich and Tony Rice. There were some other kids that were just like, I don't know if that guy was a fit at Notre Dame. And I think they used that to kind of then, kind of go at Lou and I was told force Vinny out a little bit. I don't know how true that is, but I think it really boils down to, from what I've been told, talking to Lou and other people, Lou Samoji and other people that were around at the time and following it closer than I was as a 12 to 15-year-old. It was a lot of, they just didn't like how big the football team got. And they didn't think a sports team should be bigger than the academic and the Catholic and all this other kind of stuff. So as opposed to looking at it as, hey, we're all one. We want to achieve excellence in all that we do. And we understand the value that the football team success does for the rest of us. You want to hire a new professor, build at this, build at that. Okay, support the football program because that's where that money's going to, a lot of that money's going to come from. I think a lot of it, from what I'm told, a lot of it had to do with that.
Super chat from Black Irish 864, a.k.a. our guy, Christopher Galloway. Start, bench, cut, Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor, Bruce Smith.
Wow. I'm buying Reggie White. Lawrence Taylor was great. Reggie White's, to me, the best edge player I've ever seen. He was such a complete player. Lawrence Taylor might have been the more natural, just elite edge rusher. Lawrence Taylor was amazing. But Reggie White was just a freak of nature. I mean, he was so powerful and athletic. Even when he was old, he was dominant. But Reggie White, like with the Eagles and when he first went to the Packers, was just he was a force of nature, man. He really was. Lawrence Taylor was probably the greatest, like 3-4 outside linebacker I've ever seen. But Reggie White was just different, in my opinion. He was the greatest. I'll hold Lawrence Taylor because if not for Reggie White, Lawrence would be that guy for me of my lifetime. Again, I never saw Alan Page play. I never saw Jim Marshall play. I never saw, those kind of guys. But Reggie was just, because he was not only, I mean, I'm looking at this now. There was 5 years in a row that, he was 6 years in a row. He was all pro first team. 6 of his first 7 years in the league, he was first team all pro. And then he was also first team all pro and the defensive player of the year in 1998. And he was 37. He had 16 sacks at the age of 37, and then he retired. You know what I mean? It's like, and then came back 2 years later at the age of 39 and had 5.5 sacks. He was a freak of nature. Lawrence Taylor might have been better than Reggie if Lawrence Taylor maybe lived a different lifestyle, perhaps. But Reggie was tremendous. Bruce Smith was also a great player and a deserved Hall of Famer, but to me, I would have to sell him, which is hard because he's Norfolk, Virginia native, went to the same high school my dad did, but he just wasn't quite on that same level where you could make a case for Bruce, though. Bruce had better longevity than LT did. And I, because Bruce had his first double-digit sack season in year 2 at the age of 23. And his last double-digit sack season was 2000 when he was 37 years old with the Redskins. Lawrence Taylor's career wasn't quite as long, I don't believe. I'm going to go look now because I may be wrong on that. Yeah, his last double-digit sack season was at 31, and he was out of the league by 34. And I think part of that was he wasn't as big as those other two guys. He was more of an outside linebacker than a pure DN. But Lawrence lived a very he was as aggressive off the field as he was on. He partied as hard as he played on Sundays. And I think that led to some of why his body broke down maybe a little bit faster than Bruce and Reggie, who were playing well into like almost 40 when they were playing and still productive. That'd be my answer to that. But that's why, that's a win-win-win right there, buddy. That's 3 all-time greats. That's something, Trev, I wish, like, they don't have that as much now. Like, I grew up in an era where there just was like every team seemed to have like an all Hall of Fame edge rusher. Defensive ends were like the dominant position on defense back then. Like they were to what quarterbacks are now. And to a degree that's still there, but like now it's like if you hit guys the way that Reggie and LT and Bruce Smith hit guys, it's kind of like what you were talking about earlier. It's like that time I was watching somebody put together a highlight video of Sean Taylor from Miami. And talking about how the game has changed, and it's just like the whole time I'm like, he was so amazing, but the whole time I'm watching, I'm like targeting. You couldn't play the game the way Sean Taylor played the game now. Some ways that's good, some ways that's not good. But it's just such a different era, and that's why I don't think you see it the same way. I mean, back then, 7-step drops from under center gave you a better chance of getting to the quarterback than quick throw, from the shotgun. Right. It's a different era. It's a different game. But man, that was such a great era for edge rushers. Such a great era.
That's what's so wild now about the NFL. It's like teams either have one that could potentially be a Hall of Famer or they just have none at all. I mean, there's no in between. It's like, yeah, this team has like a decent guy. It's like this team needs to go and hit free agency hard, or they have Myles Garrett. Like, I mean, it's just, or they have TJ Watt, it's crazy.
Yeah, TJ Watt, the Watt family, they do a pretty good job of producing edge rushers, wouldn't you say, Trev?
Yeah, they do okay.
Do all right. Yeah. Here, see if we understand this question. Let's give this one a whirl.
Was the Notre Dame MOU in place last year but never rose to prominence because circumstances did not warrant it?
No, it was not. Because if it was in place last year, Notre Dame would have made the playoffs because they finished the year 11th, correct? In the playoff rankings, they were 11th.
Yeah.
If the current MOU, memorandum of understanding, was in play this past year, they would have been in, and Miami would have been out. So no, it was not in play this year. The circumstances would have warranted Notre Dame being in. So if next year finished the exact same way this year did, Notre Dame would be in the playoffs. So would Duke. So, yeah. So because like Ant said, it was in place, but it didn't apply until this year. That's what I'm referring to. It was agreed upon almost 2 years ago, over a year and a half ago, but it doesn't go into effect until 2026. That's how I took him saying it being in place. But it was agreed upon before the season. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
That's kind of how I took his question. So just in case no one's clear on that.
Another one from Salty. Should week 1 be 1 or 2 weeks earlier? Probably. When is week 1? Like September 5th?
It's either
this
like
year?
it's either like the August 31st to September. It's usually August 31st to September 7th. It'll be somewhere in that first week, depending on how the Saturdays fall. You know what I mean? So like if the first Saturday of the year is like August 29th, then it'll be September, whatever, 4th or 5th. Some weeks it'll be August 31st. Like this week, Notre Dame's first game was on week 1 and it was August 31st. This year, their first game will be September 6th, right? Where everybody else will be playing on the 5th. Well, Notre Dame plays on the 6th.
Oh, Notre Dame's. Yeah.
Everybody else is on the 5th. So it's somewhere in there. So should it be a 1 or 2 weeks earlier than that?
Yeah, I mean, you could move it back a week. The biggest thing, if you're looking to shorten the postseason, is just don't have month-long gaps in between when the regular season ends and when the postseason begins. I don't think you have to move back week 1 too much. It's just my personal preference. I'm not too, again, Salty, I'm sorry I answer a lot of your questions like that. I'm just impartial. Like if they move it back a week, cool. If it stays the way that it is, that's cool with me too.
I don't think they need to create another problem in an attempt to solve another problem that's much easier solved if they just use some common sense. The reason to move it up would be to then move up the postseason where you can get the season over with sooner. They don't need to do all that. It's real simple. Get rid of college conference championships and start the season 2 weeks after the end of the regular season. And then it's real simple what you do in between there. So then all you do is move Army Navy up a week. It's still the only game in town. Season ends Saturday after Thanksgiving. That next Saturday, Army Navy. The next Saturday after that, round 1 of the playoffs. It really is that simple. And part of the reason that I don't want to move it up, and D. Troll Hunter kind of hit on it, is how much of your season now is going to be played before you have students on campus? I mean, you're already starting your season a lot of times before students arrive. When you play like on August 31st and you move it up a couple weeks, now you're getting into a half your season before students arrive, which might be actually good for your players because then that's half the season that before they have to start classes, but it's not good for your student body. And this is still supposed to be college football. I also don't love the idea of necessarily playing mid-August because you and I both know mid-August is one of the that's a smoking hot time of the year to be playing games. You also play a lot more really hot games. Everybody does. I personally don't think you need to move the season up. I'm fine with where it is. I think what they need to do is change how they do the postseason. We do not need a month off. Like, I'm not someone who, Trev, who's like begging for college football to be like everybody else. But there are some things that make college football different that we can get away with. If bowls don't mean anything anymore, then we don't need to take a month off after the end of the season.
100%.
Just we don't. And we can play 2 weeks after the season. We can play mid-December and then a week later, and then then you maybe have a break in between the quarters and semis to make sure the semis are played on January 1st, and then you play the title game a week to 10 days later. Trying to get it on a Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. Saturday or Monday kind of thing. That's how it should be played. And that's real simple. Now you're done no later than January 10th. But most likely in a lot of cases, maybe January 8th, 9th, 10th. What's there's only one reason to have time off between a title game, and that's to more media hype. But you have plenty of that. And you can still dominate the calendar. You're not too deep into the NFL end of the regular season and all that. Because what's the last weekend of the NFL season, Trev? What was that this year? Let me look real quick.
Of the regular season?
Yeah, I'm going to look at that real quick. So I'll just look at the Bills. They're the first one there. Let me go to their schedule. So the last game of the regular season was January 4th. So you could basically, and you're tired of competing against the NFL, you could basically have all but your championship game determined before the NFL regular season is over with. So those mid-December things, there's some NFL games being played, but you're going to be the big story. That's what I think they should do. Just my 2 cents. We have a super chat from our guy, Tyler Evans.
Getting into part 3 of the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Tyler Evans is getting us kicked off with a super chat. Appreciate you, Tyler. Give me a football player you thought was going to be a bust in the NFL who turned out to be a stud, and give me a player you thought was going to be a dude and then ended up being a bust.
I hate the word bust. I really do. I don't know that there's a guy that I thought would be a bust. Let me think. Most likely be like a quarterback, a guy that I thought would be a bust that ended up being good, and vice versa. I mean, I thought Brady Quinn was going to be better in the NFL than he was.
Yeah.
I never bought into that he's better than Tom Brady hype, but I thought he'd be better than he was. I was a little surprised by his NFL career. I don't want to use the word bust with the a player like Brady Quinn. I feel disrespectful, but I thought he'd be better than he was. That's just one that Notre Dame related that kind of pops off for me.
I mean, a player that I thought was going to be a bust who turned out to be a stud. I was not high on Caleb Williams. I was like, Notre Dame ran the most NFL-style defense that he faced in his time in college, and they in South Bend in 23 ate him up. The second Al Golden had a second year under his belt, and that dude's turned out to be nuts. I mean, helped turn around the Bears offense. Now, there's still things he has to work on, but it's still year one in the Ben Johnson system. But I'll be real. I thought Caleb Williams was going to be very okay. And
I'm going through here some past quarterbacks, Trev, of guys that I didn't think would be great in the NFL, and I'm trying to find some that I thought would be really good that turned out to be really good. One guy that I actually thought was going to be good in the NFL that hasn't been until now was Sam Darnold. I thought Sam Darnold was going to be pretty good in the NFL. And for a while there, he wasn't. And now I think you can kind of look back and say, okay, he's turned out to be pretty good. Some other guys that I thought were going to be really good were good until injuries. Like I thought Carson Wentz was going to be really good. For a while there, he was. And then injuries just kind of took over and made him struggle. See if I can find some others that I thought. I mean, I can go back back in the day. Blaine Gabbert, no. Jake Locker, no. I mean, Jake Locker, I thought had a chance, but he was always boom or bust. He was a very raw player. Sanchez, no. Josh Freeman. I thought Josh Freeman had a chance to be a good player. The guy from Kansas State went to Buccaneers. He was not good. I thought he'd be better. But I don't know that I thought he was going to be a star. I knew Jamarcus Russell was going to be. Everybody except the Raiders knew that Jamarcus Russell was going to be a bust. I don't take any credit for that one. Matt Leinart, that's another one. I thought Matt Leinart was going to be. I'm not going to go any further than that one. I thought Matt Leinart was going to be a good NFL player. I questioned whether or not Vince's skill set was going to translate. That one, I thought Matt Leinart's skill set would have translated well to the NFL. That's one that I got wrong.
Yeah, I've talked about this guy before too. I thought Reggie Bush was going to be an absolute dude. I'm not going to consider him a bust. I've just said it before on the show. He was just like a decade too early. Like his style of play. If Reggie Bush was in the league now, he would be talked about like how Jahmyr Gibbs is talked about, like how Bijan's talked about. I mean, he'd be getting like the same love that Jeremiah Love is getting. I mean, honestly, for how they could be used. And then another one that I and obviously personal bias plays a factor here too. I thought Chase Claypool was going to go nuts in the NFL.
He
Physical specimen.
If Chase wanted to be a really good receiver, he could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Chase's issue in the NFL was a lot like his issues of why he took so long to bust out at Notre Dame. Football was rarely the most important thing for Chase Claypool. I mean, his first 2 years in the NFL were his best years. And then he just kind of felt he cared more about modeling and, having fun and doing all the other stuff than he did about being a good football player. That was his issue at Notre Dame. Kid with his talent, Trev, should not have taken 3 years to have a moderate breakout in year 4 to break. A kid with his talent should have never made it to his senior year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you kind of thought, okay, the way he played as a senior, okay, he's figured it out. He's going to go to the NFL and be a dude. And then as a rookie, he has 9 touchdowns. You're like, okay.
11 total. Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, then he decides, I don't really care about working hard anymore. That one was
him getting paired up with Juju Smith-Schuster was probably the worst thing that could have happened to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
From Jim Halloran, do either of you have a sense or any feedback on how the players are reacting or handling the entire turnover of coaches on defense?
I think a lot of it, Jim, is it's too early to know. The feedback is there's going to be uncertainty. Players don't like unknown. You don't like not knowing what's going on.
Right.
And there's nothing you can tell them right now other than you just have to have faith in your head coach to go out in there and make a strong hire. It's always a troubling thing for a player when your coach leaves, because it's someone you trust, it's someone you leave. It's like, he's like a, he's a parental figure to you, not a parent, but like you know what I mean? Like someone that you look up to, someone who you count on, and then he's gone. And then you're like, okay, now what? And you don't know if the new guy is going to like you or have the same relationship, or what his personality is going to be like. And that can be a very disconcerting thing for a young man to deal with. So I think there's a lot of that going on. It's a lot of, a little bit of anxiety, but you just trust your head coach and you just keep working. You trust your brothers and you keep working, and trust that your head coach is going to make a hire that's going to continue the values that the previous coach did, even if the way of going about it might be a little bit different. So I think that's what they're going to. You won't really know truly how they're going to handle it until the new coach gets in there and they start getting to know him. And it won't be an issue right now. It's just the uncertainty. It becomes an issue if you make a bad hire and the players just don't connect with them and don't respect him or trust him, or he doesn't treat them well or whatever. That's when it becomes an issue. But we won't know if that's the case until they make a hire.
Yeah, luckily they're at the point in the offseason right now where the main coach they're reporting to is Lauren Landau, who's still there. And, it would be a different story if it was like the start of spring ball, and Mickens or Wash left. But, yeah, right now it all depends on who the hire is. I get you.
Yeah.
From Jacob Staley, agree it's a problem if we have coaches others aren't pursuing, not seriously pursuing. Honest question, is Mike Brown or Rudolph being pursued?
I haven't heard either of their names being mentioned. That doesn't mean that they're not being pursued. I would assume that their school's reaching out to them. I know Mike Brown, I don't know. I believe Mike Brown interviewed for an NFL job a year ago and turned it down, or maybe he didn't get it and then he turned, like who was the coach that withdrew from consideration for a NFL job? Usually when a guy's withdrawing from consideration, it's because he knows he's not going to get the job, and that just gives him the ability to say, hey, I'm out. But I don't know about this offseason. I'm not saying they have or haven't. I don't know. I haven't heard anything on them. Like, we heard Mickens and Washington's name thrown around in December. And the minute Michigan State fired fired Jonathan Smith, you're like, okay. I have a feeling the new coach is going to look at Max Bullough either as the D coordinator or as kind of the co-D coordinator under Joe Rossi. You kind of knew that was a possibility. I've heard Marty Biagi's name thrown around. Those are the only ones I've really heard seriously thrown around. I haven't heard anybody else, which surprises me. I'm still surprised Gino Guidugli hasn't gotten more love as a potential offensive coordinator. That surprises me a little bit. Good for Notre Dame, but it surprises me a little bit.
From Jay Melvin, I don't mean to sound dumb, but what is the board? How do you join it? Do you have to pay to be a part of it?
So, Jay Melvin, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. The board is our premium message board. It's called the Champions Lounge, and it is another thing that we do at Irish Breakdown. It is just a normal message board. You do have to pay to be a member. It's $6.99 a month or $69.99 for a year. And we'll put some intel on there. We'll put breakdowns on there. All of our articles are on there. It's a great community. A lot of people talking football. We talk other things. People put prayer requests on there. I mean, it really is meant to be a community, not just a place where we just put news and notes, but it's a place where guys go every day. And sometimes I'm like, hey, can we bump up the story we wrote because you guys are talking about all these other things? You know what I mean? But and there's just some things that we don't talk about in public forums like this that we'll put on the message board as sort of a thank you to the people that are paying money to be part of that community. So that's what that is. And you can find that at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So we started that in July of 2021. So we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary. starting the
Right.
message board. And so had great growth, and it really is a great community. We raised the rates recently, and I had projected for a level of loss. You just have to project for that when you raise rates, and we weren't anywhere close to that. We were, I think, like 90, I think, honest, true, I think 97% retention, something like that, from when we raise rates, which is just awesome. So I'm very happy about that. But yeah, that's a place you want to be. And it's the best way to support us financially is that. That's the best way to do it.
From ICURN with Irish Luck, I liked the 2 early top 25. Could you do a quick 2 early top 5 to 10 most talented rosters?
Well, a lot of that, Trev, is not going to look too much different than our top 25 outside of, I think you could argue a couple teams outside that. So like the top 5 teams that we have are definitely top rosters. Notre Dame, for me, it's Indiana, Notre Dame, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State. I'd throw Miami in there. Georgia's in the top 10, and I'd have Oklahoma borderline top 10. I think those 8 are for sure in the top 5 to 10. I don't know that I'd have Texas Tech and BYU, who are my 9 and 10 teams. Trev, we both have them 9 and 10. I don't know that I'd say they have more talented rosters than, say, Texas A&M or even USC or LSU. That I don't know. I would actually push back against it. I would probably put LSU and either Texas A&M or maybe USC, maybe in that next group of just talented roster. I think Texas A&M has a better roster than Texas Tech. They just don't get to play in the Big 12. I think if Texas Tech was in the Big 12 last year, they're 12-0 and they're the conference champs. So that would be mine, Trev. Is yours any different? So it'd be the top 8 teams plus, I'd probably say Texas A&M and LSU. It's probably where I'd probably put LSU's roster over USC's, just pure talent. That's where I would be.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking just pure talent, I would debate about LSU being above Georgia for my rankings. If we're talking just strictly talent,
meaning you'd put them ahead of Georgia.
Yeah. If we're talking just strictly talent, because a lot of my ranking of Georgia
definitely have top 10, both of them in the top 10.
Yeah. They would definitely both be in the top 10. But if we're talking just talent, like I ranked Georgia that high, a lot of it because they had Kirby Smart.
So where did you had Georgia 7th in your rankings? Yeah. I had him 6th. I'm going to make a statement. You tell me if I'm correct in the statement. I would say that you and I probably have Georgia closer to 9 or 10 when it comes to talent of their roster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I put LSU
7 and 6 in the rankings.
Yes, absolutely. And I put LSU at 11th on mine, not for the talent on their roster, but because there was so much new, So that's interesting. From Beezer12, Washing Beard. Since you get access in the spring and fall, who is the scariest coach on the staff in terms of butt chewings given at practice?
Marcus Freeman.
Yeah.
He doesn't give many of them, but when he gives them, everybody stops and listens and watches. This staff doesn't have, from what we saw. Now, I don't know how Chris Ash's and some of these coaches are at practices that we aren't at, because some coaches act differently when the media is open than they do, which is fine. I would prefer to just tell them, hey, guys, act however you want to act. And then you tell the media, you don't report on anything coaches say or do. You can report on what they were doing, in that Joe Rudolph was working with the offensive line on combos and he was correcting people on this, but you don't write that he was cussing at him. You don't write that he went off on this player. You don't do any of that. If somebody violates that, then you take their credential and you don't let them come to practice anymore. But I also get why coaches are that way. I do. I don't know how Chris Hatch doesn't practice.
I'd be willing to bet, just from straight up looking at his picture, I bet Charlie Partridge could give one heck of a butt chewing.
Yeah.
Like that dude was put on this earth to coach defensive linemen.
Yes. He has that look. I don't know that there's any Harry He-stands on the staff. Like guys that just like, oh my gosh, did you hear that? Like, that ripping he just did. I don't know if there's that. But right now, I mean, Marcus Freeman's the one. I mean, there's been times we're walking out and he'll start going off, and we all stop and look back like, whoa, what was that? He gives a good butt chewing, which is good. That needs to be done sometimes. Yeah. And that's what he doesn't give them often, but when he does, everybody stops and listens. That it's yeah.
From Brandon Gilbert, just passed by another University of Scared Children billboard with the motto, quote, "The time is now." Thoughts?
For what?
I was just about to say.
For what? The time is now to read the board? Okay, sure. Yeah, I read it. It says the time is now. In all honesty, I do think that is the mantra for USC now. I mean, it's sort of like, I've mentioned the show before, but there's a show called The Chosen. I actually going through season 1 and 2. I'm into season 2. I'm going through it again because Ange and I are going to get caught up and watch the seasons we haven't seen yet. But like, there's this thing where Mary says to Jesus, and then Jesus says it later, or Jesus says it first, and then Mary says it back to him when he's older. If not now, when? And I think that's absolutely a mantra for USC, is if you're not going to take that step now, you're in year, 4? 5? Didn't he get the job a year before Marcus Freeman? I'm trying to remember.
No, I think he got the year. They both started in 22, didn't they?
So maybe, because I remember Brian Kelly getting the job and Lincoln Riley going after it, but it could have been when Lincoln turned it down, then they went to Kelly. So let me just go look, because I think you might be right. It was 22. So this is year 5 for him. If not now, when? Your first team was still your best team. If you're just going to put together another 9-4 season, 8-5 season, that's just who you are. So yeah, I think there's a lot to that. The time is now to find out who Lincoln Riley is. That's what I would say that means. But if they think the time is now for them to get back to their glory, all I'll say is this: if that happens, we're all blaming Trevor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was like, why? I was like, what did I do? Yeah, now I remember.
Yeah.
Oh,
so we won't talk about that. We won't put that out there unless it happens, and then we'll tell everyone why I'm blaming Trevor.
Yeah, there's a list of things that I'm just not touching this season.
Good. No weather. No. Yes.
I don't even know what you're talking about. From Patrick Earwood. Is Jaden Osbury, sorry if I butchered his name, the most underrated or under-recognized starter on the entire team?
Oh, yeah. I was having a debate with somebody who's a pretty knowledgeable guy, pretty informed in the show a lot, watches the team, and he was like, Jaden Osbury started last year? And I was like, yeah, 10 games, the last 10-game season. Are you sure? Yeah, pretty darn. I do break these things down for a living. I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for how good he's been the last 2 years. 100%. It's always put Jalen Steed in the game, put Kingston in the game, Madden Framo in the game. It's always anybody but Drake Bone or Jaden Osbury. It's like who fans won the game. And Jaden is even more underappreciated and underrated and lack of recognition as Drake. I think Jaden's been a very good player for Notre Dame the last 2 years. Very good player.
Agreed. Yeah, honestly, 1 and 2 is probably him and Drake.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Drake is underrated. He gets plenty of recognition and recognized, whether good or bad. But underrated, absolutely. Last 2 years. Go ahead, Sheriff.
No, I was just about to say what's so interesting is like Jaden Osbury, it's nationally. For Drake Bowen, it's the Notre Dame fan base.
That's right.
Like that's what's so
You could
weird.
argue that he gets more love for from national media at times than he does from the Notre Dame fan base.
Mhm.
I think you could absolutely make that case. Certainly. All right, let's get down to this one from another one from ICU with ICURN with Irish Luck.
Are they going to give Will Black a chance this spring and fall to battle at either tackle spot?
I believe so. I think Will Black is going to get a chance at both guard and tackle this offseason in hopes of seeing where he fits best to push for playing time. It doesn't guarantee that he's going to have a starting spot, but I think he'll get an opportunity at both. And if he looks comfortable enough at tackle, then I think they'll give him a chance to battle there. And then, what happens there? Is he the number 2 behind somebody and then he steps in next year if one of those guys goes pro, or does he play well enough where you feel like you can move one of those guys inside, and Anthony Knapp or Gerby Lambert inside because Will's ready to seize hold of one of the tackle spots? I think that'll be determined at this point, but I certainly think he'll get that chance to prove himself. I think you could debate the merits of, well, a guy that young, shouldn't you just let him pick one and play? And I think there's merit to that. But in this instance, I do think they're going to move him around with the hope that he can show a comfort level at one of the 2 spots to push for a starting job.
Makes sense. I'm going to go with iCave03. What changes to the run scheme, if any, would you like to see now that Love and Price are gone?
Well, number one, for the love of all things holy, can we get an outside change of pace run? Can we get a buck sweep or a toss crack or something to kind of mess with the eye discipline of a team? Can we just not run in mid zone and duo like all game long? And then your counter to that is a downhill counter play that's blocked like counter but run like power, where you're attacking the A gap. I mean, teams just know they can come straight downhill against the Notre Dame defense, and what does downhill means? It means it means that playing downhill, you're playing between the tackles. That's where the game is being played. It's between the tackles. So when you say a defense is allowed to play downhill, they don't have to worry about true misdirection. They don't have to worry about reverses. They don't have to worry about some of the more gadgety type of screen passes that can throw teams off. They don't have to worry about, coming downhill and being like a team is a linebacker's gonna be more willing to fly downhill at the snap and then react to wherever he's got to go in the box if he's not worried about Notre Dame running a buck sweep or a toss or crack or something like that, because he doesn't have to worry about getting sucked inside.
Right.
Because they don't have anything to throw that off. That's really the thing for me is, and I'm not someone, Trev, that believes you need like 10 to 12 different run schemes. You don't need, inside zone, mid zone, outside zone, duo, counter, power, G wrap, buck sweep, G scheme, true toss outside. You don't need all those every game. Give me 3 or 4 like base runs, duo. If mid zone is your thing over inside zone and you want to run duos, you're downhill, that's fine. Give me outside zone and give me counters, my base runs. But then have 2 different ways of getting outside, some sort of pin and pull, some sort of toss, some sort of something like that, to be able to kind of really mess with the responsibilities, the numbers, the checks for, and just the eye discipline of linebackers and safeties. Just please. That's all I'm asking. And because like Harry Heastan ran inside zone to death when he was the offensive line coach in Notre Dame. But they always had that G scheme and the buck sweep to counter it, to where if you started cheating to take away inside zone, they were going to run buck sweep for a big play. I mean, they ran buck sweep for a 74-yard touchdown against North Carolina in 2017. They ran a G scheme for a 60-yard touchdown against Miami of Ohio. They ran more of an off-tackle counter for a touchdown in 15 against Georgia Tech. That was I think 91 yards to CJ Procise. Who was it? Was it NC State? They had another big G scheme play, Buck Sweet play in 2017 behind that. That was a big play for them because it was meant to be a big play. It's a bit of a boomer bust play. If you don't call it right, they may tack you for a 2-yard loss. But if you call it right and you catch them in it, it could be a house call with the backs Notre Dame has. So I absolutely think that you need something like that. Joe Rudolph is very much we're running between the tackles guy. That's very much who he is. I would like to see him and Mike Demrock get together and say, yeah, that's fine, but we need some true counters. And when I mean counters, I don't mean like the big C counter, gap scheme, kick, pull. I'm talking counters with a small c, like you've got to have things that counter what you do to make teams pay for the things that they're doing to try to take away your bread and butter. That's
agreed with it. Agreed with everything that you're saying. At the bare minimum, I just want to see more aggressive motion pre-snap.
Yeah.
Not just a little zipper motion to the tight end and just getting him from the slot to attached or from attached to the slot. With the personnel that they have in the receiving core between Jordan Faison and Mylan Graham and Jaden Greathouse, or even if you want to dip in a little farther, go Bubba Frazier or Braden Robinson, people like that, you can test the eye discipline before the ball's even snapped. I want to see just literally anything that resembles a little bit more aggressive pre-snap motion to try to mess with the eye discipline of the safeties just a little bit. It's just so you don't have other safeties like a Ty Benefield, like what he did a couple times against Boise State, just be able to pin his ears back and come blow something up in the hole.
Yep.
From Fred G. Sanford, how our defenses handles the trios of Mark Fletcher, Malachi Tony, and Darian Mensah versus Miami will say a lot about Coach Ash. They'll be like a more veteran A&M squad with a better passer.
A more veteran A&M, that I disagree with. I mean, Texas A&M's offensive line was as experienced as you were going to get. They didn't exactly have a bunch of puppies at wide receiver either. All their guys were in their third or fourth years. Their tight ends were veteran. Their running backs were veteran. They had the most experienced offensive line on the schedule. So I don't know that I'd say a more veteran A&M squad with a better passer. I do agree with the better passer part. I do think that Darian Mensah is a more natural passer than what Marcel Lee is, certainly. But I don't know that I would agree with the second part, but I think your first part is I said Marcel Reed. I agree with your first part, though. How your game plan to stop the run game and then keeping Malachi Tony from going off on you is going to be very important. Having said that, that's what makes the pickup of Cooper Barcotti, Cam Vaughn, and the Jacobs kid from South Carolina so important, because if you put too much attention to stopping Malachi Tony, they have much better weapons that can hurt you this year than they did last year. Much better weapons. So it'll be even tougher this year to stop that trio than it was last year, which is why I think this Miami offense could end up being really good in 2026.
Yeah, man. Like we talked about in the way too early top 25, it's all going to come down to their offensive line play, because their skilled talent is exceptional for what they bring back and what they brought in from the portal.
Mm-hmm.
From Clyde the Glide 574, I have seen Notre Dame win 3 natties, obviously 2 with Era and 1 with Lou. Where does Lou land in Notre Dame's greatest coaches?
They were having a conversation in the chat about, and Clyde had mentioned that he forgot to mention 77 as well with Dan Devine. So he's actually seen 4 natties if he saw 2 with Era. I would put Lou 4th all time for Notre Dame, behind Newt Rockne, Frank Leahy, and Era Parsegian. And the reason that I rank him 4th behind Era is I do think Lou had to play tougher schedules for the most part than what Era did, but Era won a title in his 2nd year and then another title in his, I think, 8th or 9th year, 73. So it'd be what, 9th year? Where Lou had that one title in 88 in year 3, but then he didn't win. What did I say? Era's 2nd year, 3rd year, because it was the 3rd year title thing. And then won another one in year 9. Lou never won another one. And so You could argue he should have. 93 team, should have. But I got to put him behind Era. That's kind of where I'm at. I got to put him behind Era. And I think Era finished his tenure off on a little bit of a stronger note than what Lou did. His last few years were better than what Lou's what Lou was. So I'm actually going to look something up and see where Lou ranks in the all-time win percentage. So of coaches who have been at Notre Dame at least 5 years, Knute Rockne ranks first. Jess Harper is second. Frank Leahy is third. Ara Parseghian is fourth. Elmer Layden is fifth, but he never won a title. Lou is sixth. Dan Devine is seventh. Brian Kelly's eighth. And if Notre Dame has a repeat of last year, and Marcus Freeman gets to his fifth year and they go at least 10-2 again, Marcus Freeman will actually be ahead of Elmer Layden. He'll be between Era and Lou. His current win percentage is actually right now better than Lou Holtz's by .004. He's a 769 win percentage. Lou is 765. Part of that was because Lou's first year they went 5-6 because he inherited a much different situation than the one Marcus Freeman walked into. But from 88 to 93, Notre Dame was the second or third best program in college football. They just only got the one title, where the other guys won two. And so I'd put him ahead of Elmer Layden. I've put him ahead of Jess Harper because he won a title and they didn't. So I'd put him fourth. And at most places, Lou's 1, 2, or 3. But at Notre Dame, you've got Frank Leahy, Knute Rockne and Ara Parseghian. Those are all-time legends.
Yeah.
So like Sean Davis and I were having this conversation yesterday, and he was kind of, how Sean is. He likes to poke the bear a little bit, and he starts talking about how Kelly is the all-time winningest coach. I was like, bro. I said, first of all, that's a longevity award. Number two is because we were talking about. I guess they had a conversation on their show about like Notre Dame needs to have a Hall of Fame and who should be in the Hall of Fame, and he's talking about how Brian Kelly should go in on this first time. And I said, why? He says, the all-time winningest coach. I said, that's not standard in Notre Dame. That's a longevity award. He didn't win a title, and he's like 8th in win percentage among coaches who were here at least 5 years. And he's 9th after this year. He'll probably be 9th because Freeman will be ahead of him. So, yeah, I'd put him 4th. Do you have thoughts on that, Trev?
No, I mean, if we're going strictly off of championships, I agree. Lou should be 4th. And that's how I gauge a lot. That's how I gauge stuff for like the NFL Hall of Fame, things like that. So I'm on the same page as you are.
Can you be a Hall of Fame coach? This is my question. Can you be a Hall of Fame coach without winning a title?
You could, but it would be tough. For things that I look at is like, did you revolutionize the game? Did you do something different outside of like being a longevity award person? I don't know. I think that's tough to be a Hall of Fame coach without winning a title. I think that would be difficult for how I look at things. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's cases, but
yeah. So to me, and this is true kind of in all sports, you would need a much longer period of success for me to say that you can be a Hall of Fame coach without winning a title. An example that I would point to would be, actually, no, because he won a title. Lenny Wilkins won a title. I'm trying to think of some coaches that are like all-time winningest coaches. Let me see, all-time winningest NFL coaches. Because Lenny Wilkins is basketball, but like Don Shula won a title. Bill Belichick won a title. Let's see here, all-time wins leaders. So Don Shula won a Super Bowl. I believe George Halas did before the Super Bowls. Bill Belichick did. Andy Reid did. Tom Landry did. I don't know about Curly Lambeau, but I'm trying to find Marty Schottenheimer. Here's an example. Marty Schottenheimer's 8th all-time in wins. Never won a Super Bowl. The reason I think you can make an argument for Marty being in the Super Bowl or being in the Hall of Fame is because he was so extraordinarily successful beyond the championships. Marty Schottenheimer has 7 more career wins than Chuck Noll. He also has a significantly greater all-time win percentage than Chuck Noll. And he did that with 4 different teams. He had success with 3 of the 4 different teams. He only was at Washington for a year, but he won with the Browns. And if it wasn't for the presence of John Elway, he would have taken the Browns to at least 1 Super Bowl. They beat him 2 times. The third time, I think Bud Carson was the head coach the third time. Then he had great success with the Chargers. And he did it with teams, Trev, that didn't have success, as much success outside of his tenure. You know what I mean? So that's why I think you can consider that, but like Dan Reeves, I wouldn't, even though Dan Reeves is 11th all time in wins, but his career win percentage is only 535. Marty Schottenheimer 613. And Dan Reeves had a losing record at the other 2 places he was at. The only place he won was in Denver with John Elway. He didn't have that success anywhere else. He had that 1 good year with the Falcons, and then they went and got blasted by John Elway in the Super Bowl. Yeah, losing record with the Giants and the Falcons. Whereas Marty had success everywhere he went. That would be one of the few exceptions to the rule, but you have to have coached a long time and had consistent success for a long time to be that. Like, am I going to count it? Do I think Mike McCarthy's a better coach than Marty Schottenheimer? No. He's got a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, do I think Mike Tomlin's a better coach than Marty Schottenheimer? No. He's got a Super Bowl. So you have to balance that, in my opinion. But you better have a very long, consistent ray of success to be that. Just like players. You could, if you're going to never have been one of the elite players in your league, you better have played 15, 20 years. You know what I mean? To be able to accomplish that. So you've got the 3,000 hit mark or whatever. Because your greatness was your ability to be a good player for 15 to 20 years, where this other guy was a great player for 4. And I think that's kind of how I factor that in a little bit. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Like, championships are definitely not the end all be all. The thing that is tough, though, is if you don't have one, to your point with, guys like Schottenheimer, for players like Phillip Rivers, I mean, he never even won an AFC championship. I don't think he had any NFL MVP, stuff like that. But then you also have to be something. And I think he's like top 6 all time in the NFL in passing. Again, longevity, but it's stuff like, okay, have you had success in multiple stops? Kind of tough with him because he was with the Chargers forever. But with coaches more so, yeah, like somebody like Schottenheimer having success at multiple stops, that I'm all on board with. But championships weigh a heavier factor with me personally, because it's like, what's the ultimate goal of playing? It's to win a championship. What's the ultimate goal? Like, that's the goal of every team at the start of every season, whether you're coaching in high school, college, the NFL. So that's what makes it carry a heavier weight with me, but definitely not the only thing that I value. Because to your point, like, there's other players out there where it's like, trying to think. I mean, there's quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers that only has 2 Super Bowls. There's other quarterbacks that have multiple Super Bowl wins, but I'm not going to take them over Aaron Rodgers type of thing. The same thing that you brought up about like Mike Tomlin, Marty Schottenheimer. So
agree.
From Salty, should members of sports media ever ask a coach or athlete about his or her political views or political party preferences?
Only if the athlete is the one that initiates the conversation. Otherwise, it's irrelevant to the job you're trying to do. If you want to ask Jim Harbaugh about his political views because he chose to be at the March for Life, which is something I absolutely praise him for, because it's a cause he believes in that I also believe in. The March for Life is the march on D.C. to try to end abortion. Fully support that. Yeah, he kind of put it out there that this is a cause that I believe in. I think they should be allowed to ask him honest questions about that. Coach, like, here's what you think. You're a head coach in California. You're at this. Can you explain why this is something that you feel is good for you to be at and speak at, stuff like that? I think that's fair game. If a coach makes a political statement, if a coach says or does something that draws his political views or party preferences into the conversation, then yeah, if a coach attends a political rally, a coach goes in front of the Republican National Convention or the Democratic National Convention and advocates for a president, he should be allowed to be asked about it in a certain way that is looking to share a story. I don't think, I'm not going to criticize a coach because he's a Democrat if I'm a Republican, and it shouldn't be the other way around, because that doesn't determine the quality of the job that he does. I don't have, well, he's my favorite coach. Why? Well, he voted for the way that I vote. Okay, but they went 3-9 last year. Yeah, but he votes. Hey, how are you supporting that guy? He votes Democrat. Well, I don't care. I don't like him because he's going to run for elected office. He's the head football coach of this team that I root for, and they won the Super Bowl last year. They won the national championship last year. He can vote for whoever the heck he wants to. It's irrelevant to the job that I'm doing as someone who covers the Notre Dame football team, unless he makes it a story. Then I think it's fair game. You know what I mean? Like, if you find out that so-and-so voted for so-and-so, so that's his business. He doesn't make it a part of his job. He's not out there in front of his players trying to get them to go vote for a guy. Like, if a coach says to his players in November so we'll have the midterms are going to come up here in 2026. If Marcus Freeman gets before his players, say, listen, fellas, you're all of age. I think it's important for you guys to be politically involved. I think you guys should do some research on the candidates that are in your community. And I think voting is something that you should take seriously. If you're going to do it, you should, do your homework, do your research, come to your own conclusions. And I think, if you're willing to do that, then I think voting is something you should do. But that's all he says. That's between him and his team. He's giving good advice to young men to get them be engaged in a political process that affects their everyday lives. But he's not telling them, but make sure you vote D like me or R like me or I like me. You know what I mean? He's saying engage in the process in the right way. And then whoever you vote for is your choice. Now, if he's up there saying, hey, fellas, you should go vote and vote for so-and-so, okay, now you've made this an issue that people have a right to call you on. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. Well, hey, coach, you gave your players this advice to go be involved. Who are you voting for? I didn't ask them who they should vote for or who they're voting for. I didn't tell them who to vote for. It doesn't matter to you who I vote for. You know what I mean? And he'd be right. But if you then make it a story and make it an issue, then I think people have the right to make it an issue. If you keep your political views private, in certain ways, then I think they should remain that way. And honestly, I don't even know if I would ask a guy about that in a football setting. Like the next interview that Jim Harbaugh does and before the media, I'm not going to ask him about his right to life thing. If I'm there or if I'm bringing him onto my show to talk about that stance, that's a different story. But in the next preseason media day for the Chargers, I don't think it's relevant to talk about that. He didn't make his players send him there or whatever. So I don't think it should be that way. I don't think media people should look into that. They shouldn't make it a story. Well, this guy voted for so-and-so. So what's that have to do with the job he did? Yeah, but how could someone – that's your view because you have a political view of this. That doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just different from you, and it's not relevant to the job he does unless he makes it relevant to the job that he does. That's what I would say. Thoughts on that, Trev?
No, we see that very much the same. If they do something to invoke the conversation, then yeah, absolutely. But for me, it just comes down to the time and place. I know you said that too. It's like there is a reporter that asked Marcus Freeman about something about like his own like after the Orange Bowl, tried to sneak in something about like his race or his background. It's like, hey, look, man, like that's not what we're talking about right now. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk about that before or in some sort of press conference, fine. But like there's times and places to do it. And so if you are going to ask that question, make sure that it's the proper setting. That's my biggest thing is if it's in the right setting, then yeah, especially if they're open about it. Like some athletes are very open about their political views. Some coaches are very open about their political views. And that's fine to ask if they invoke it. But if the big thing now is like an interview after what feels like every timeout, every quarter, every half, every whatever. And it's like, if they're like, coach, what are you going to do to stop the run? Also, we noticed that you were at this rally. Thoughts on that? But
you gave a shout out to the president up in the thing, and we don't like that president, or we do, or whatever. Yeah, it's irrelevant. Like there was a player recently, I can't remember who it was, but he got in trouble because he kind of made a motion up to the president the current president. I think it was one of the St. Brown brothers. And it was just a recognition of, hey, the president's here. And he got a lot of flack for it. Why? Like, seriously, grow up. But we're on the same page. It's about, if he makes it an issue, then it's fair game. But even then, there's a right and a wrong way to do it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, if Marcus Freeman makes his politics a part of his job, then I have a right to ask him to explain why and the relevance or whatever. I'm not going to get up there and have a debate with him about economics because he has a view on tax cuts that I don't agree with.
Right.
That's not my job. My job is to get him to explain why he felt it was important at this time to make this statement to his players. And then I can come on a podcast and be critical of it or whatever. That's my right. But in that moment of an interview, my job is to gather information, not debate politics with a head football coach. That's kind of how I feel about it. And that's true whether he agrees with my politics or not. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Good question. Very good question. Let's get to this one from let's see. This is a good one, Trev. I'll let you start with this one. I'm going to read this one from Jay Melvin. Brian, what gives you more confidence in 20? So I'll say Trevor, and then I'll answer it. Gives you more confidence in 26 Notre Dame winning a title, winning a championship, than 25 Notre Dame, because both are great rosters. We thought 25 would be the year.
Some of it comes down to continuity at the coordinator position. Having a first-year defensive coordinator and going winning a championship, although I think Brian, you told me last night that the last time Notre Dame won a national championship was a first-year defensive coordinator. So I think continuity is big, especially in college football today. This is the first time in Marcus Freeman's career that he's had a returning starting quarterback. It would have been a lot for C.J. Carr to go win a national championship his first year as a starter as a redshirt freshman. Think of the starting quarterbacks that have played in the championship games the last 2 years. Riley Leonard, Will Howard, Carson Beck, Fernando Mendoza. You've had very experienced players playing for it all at the end of the last 2 seasons. C.J. Carr, absolutely. I have full confidence that he would have been very competitive and competed in every playoff game that he would have played in if Notre Dame didn't get snubbed. That being said, there is a aspect to that that's an unknown. So C.J. being a year older gives me a lot of confidence. Mike Denbrock going into year 3. You have more experience. I think you're going to be more talented in the trenches this year, not necessarily more experience because you're losing guys like Emil Wagner and Billy Schrouth. But you're going to be more talented in the trenches on both sides of the ball. What do you need to win a championship? A premier edge rusher. Well, last year, Boubacar Traore was like a year removed from his injury. That was his season back. And now he's started 11 games for Notre Dame, and we've seen how effective he can be. Bryce Young is a year older. Leonard Moore is a year older. So it's just the natural growth of the roster. I understand a lot of people looking at this saying like, well, now there's no Jay Love or Jadarian Price. It's like, yeah, that's true, and that stings. Because I would have loved nothing more than to watch number 4 or number 24 run wild in the national championship game. But with that being said, still had confidence in the running back room. A lot of it, Jay Melvin, is just the maturation of the roster and the coaching staff. Gives me a lot of confidence that Notre Dame can win it all this year.
You mentioned Chris Ash being in year 2 instead of year 1. I also think that assuming Charles Jagasaw is healthy and assuming the D-line stays relatively healthy, I think the line play is a big reason why I'm even on top of the things that Trevor just said, CJ going into year 2 and all that. I still say this team would have looked a lot different if Charles Jagasaw didn't get hurt. Like a lot different in 2025. And my confidence in that team winning would have been different than when he got hurt. Also, you had Boubacar coming off a season-ending injury. You had Jordan Patojo coming off of a season-ending injury. You had Gabriel Rubio had been struggling to stay healthy. There was a lot more questions about where, and we thought Bryce Young was still a year away. This is something that I think I remember you and I agreeing on, Trev, is like Bryce is going to be better, but I think this notion that Bryce is going to break out and have this monster All-American season, we were like, let's pump the brakes a little bit on that. Let's give him a year. He's still pretty raw. I have much greater level of confidence that the line play is going to be really good this season than I did last year. Like, it would take a not good coaching job or another year of injuries for that to be the case. That's kind of where I'm at on that one as well. I think that's another factor as to why I think this team is better positioned for that.
Well, and another big picture factor too is the fact that look, last year at this time they'd been done playing football for 10 days. Like the rest and recovery timeline is completely different. As frustrated and as sad as I am that the season ended the way that it did, this team is fresh. You're not going to have to sit players in the spring. Brian, you brought up a point in the show a couple weeks ago that I thought was brilliant. I mean, Emil Wagner, borderline regressed from 24 to 25, and he didn't do a lot in the spring because he played 973 snaps in 2024. They had to rest him. You're not in that position this year. So there's more room for improvement for some players, and I think that plays a factor too. But gives me a lot of confidence. Notre Dame on FanDuel right now is still the favorite to win the national championship this year. I don't really see that line moving anytime soon, but very interested to see how that continues to go moving forward. But this year, that's all hands on deck for sure.
Yep, for sure. Going to get a few more here before we get out of here. Here's an interesting. It's kind of a personal one. So what's this? What's this one?
From J. Melvin, Brian, if I may ask, what is the main reason you fell out of love with the NFL and stopped supporting it?
Big reason why is I just didn't like the direction the game was going. I also think I realized the older I got that I was more of a John Elway fan than the Broncos fan. I just got to the point where the league was so pass heavy and the rules were so continuing to more and more and more get geared towards that part of the game that I just didn't enjoy watching it as much. And so why that matters is because Sunday for most of my adult life has been a work day. When I was coaching, Sunday was we're breaking down film. We've got meetings. So like I had to put effort into watching an NFL game. It'd be like late at night. It'd be later in the week. I couldn't often watch games live except during our bye weeks, because we're in the office first thing in the morning on Sunday. We're breaking down film. We're grading the film. We're meeting as a staff on film. We then meet with our players and go over the game plan. Some places we wait till Monday to do that. But then once we got done grading film and having our staff meetings, we then dive right into, okay, let's start breaking down the opposing team. And where I coach, we didn't have all these GAs and people that could break down film for us. We had to do that, so then there's that. And then we're meeting that night going over film and we're talking about, initial game plan. What are the things we want to start working on? And then we get back to that on Monday. So, and then doing this job too, Sunday's kind of a busy day. I'm breaking games down. We have to do the upon further review. So if I'm going to make time to watch an NFL game, I better darn sure love watching the NFL game. And I just didn't love it as much. I missed the days where you could run the football and you'd have, impactful runners. You could hit the quarterback. You could lay out a receiver. That just the NFL is just not NFL anymore. And then also, if I'm being honest, there was a time there I was already kind of falling out of love with it, where they started making it way more politicized about certain things. Where I was just like, all right, I don't care enough about what your product to have to then be preached at. You know what I mean? About this thing or that thing. And so that was kind of the final thing for me. It was like, all right, I'm kind of over it. But I was already falling out of love with it already.
Sure.
Because I just didn't enjoy the game as much. It just wasn't my brand of football. And, and then now John Elway wasn't involved with the league at all. Because remember, he played for the Broncos, and then there was a time went by, and then he became the GM of the Broncos. So I just kind of a little bit fell out of love with it, and it just didn't matter enough to me to make the time on a work day, which is what Sunday is for me, to sit down and watch the NFL. Up until last year, I don't think I didn't watch last year's Super Bowl. But up until that, I still would watch the Super Bowl and the AFC and NFC championships every year just because it's football. And we're out of season, so I don't have as much to do on a Sunday. But I watched the Broncos-Patriots game last week, and I'm just like, this is boring football. And I watched the Broncos-Chargers game, the Broncos-Bills game the week before that. I'm like, it was more entertaining, but it just wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is such good football, that I just felt the passion coming back for the NFL. I just didn't care. And so those are the reasons I didn't. And that's just a personal choice. I understand some people love the game. Some people never had a great passion for it. Trevor, I think you said you've never been a huge NFL guy. You watch it, but you've never necessarily had the team where when I was a kid, NFL meant even more to me than college football for when I was 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. Just now it's just different now.
Oh yeah. No, that's totally fair, man. I mean, the only reason why I watch the NFL still is strictly for like the entertainment piece because I just like when football's on. But I watch Notre Dame and I watch college football so much differently than the NFL. And I love football to the degree where it's like, dude, I need to be able to watch it and not have like my entire emotions based on what happens in this game. You know what I mean? Like that's why I still watch it. Cause like I like to just turn it on. It's like, oh, that cool thing happened, because yeah, especially with the job that we work now, college football is not just games are still entertaining, don't get me wrong, but it's you watch it to a different degree. And whereas the NFL, I can just turn it on and just turn my brain off, and I could miss an entire quarter and a half if I got to go do something and come back and it's cool. Whereas, I mean, college, I watch, it's like I'm trying to remember every play, every motion, every shift. And it's just like, I need something on Sunday to just kind of turn my brain off for a second.
Yeah.
And that's what the NFL is
Like,
great
like
for
numb
me.
watching it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like sitting there watching a movie you've already seen before
Yep.
on a Sunday. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Because there's just something about like, you're sitting there, you got some food in the crock pot, like you go out and do some stuff in the morning, come home, there's just football on. That's what I like about it. It's not so much, I mean, I'm a Bengals fan because, my wife lived in Cincy and, we'll watch the games together. But when they lose, this is going to sound crazy, but it's nice to watch like a team that I'm rooting for lose. And then I'm just not in a bad mood for 4 days. You know what I mean? Like I can watch it and the Bengals lose because they do that quite often. And then I can just be like, oh, dang, that stinks. And then I just go on with the rest of my day. Whereas when Notre Dame loses, it's just like there's just this dark cloud that hovers over me until Friday. And it's like, all right, hope that doesn't happen again. So that's how I watch the NFL. It's refreshing. Super chat from Catfish Kelly's Dirty Plunger. Appreciate the super chat. Opinion of the pathetic show of IU fans at their celebration.
Do you know how cold it was that day?
No, I'm saying
that is nothing but a pure media clickbait driven thing. It was freaking below. Wasn't it in the negatives that day? Here's what I know.
Chill. Yeah.
This is what I know about Indiana's fans supporting that team. Name me a place they played this postseason where their crowd wasn't bigger than the opposing team's crowd, including the title game in freaking Miami. So, yeah, I'll give them a pass for not showing up to a minus wind chill in the negatives, celebration after the fact. They paid the money to be at the games. That's what defines how well you support your team. You know what I mean? And I'm sure Indiana's program cares more about that than they do people showing up for that either. So they should have canceled it and had it another time. But that to me is a non-story. I wouldn't have gone either. I'm not going to stand out there in negative degree weather so I can hear you talk about a game that I just watched, you know what I mean? That I watched you win. Pass. So no, what I think that's not pathetic. That's a non-story to me. An absolute non-story to me. If Notre Dame would have won a title, there wouldn't have been a lot of people out there either. I would have been out. Trev, would you have gone out there would you have driven up to South Bend, Indiana to watch the team do their celebration talk in minus 5 degree weather? Honestly,
I would have, but I'm a crazy person. I would.
You would have been there with the other 55 to 100 crazy people. I wouldn't. But I think that's a non-story to me. That's what I think of that.
Yeah.
Look at the Indiana crowd in the 3 playoff games they played.
Yeah. I don't think it's pathetic. It's just one of those things where it's fun to go around on social media for people to tweet that out. But let's just grant that premise as it was pathetic. They still won it. That's not pathetic. Let's be real about that. I've had my fun with my, family members that are IU fans. It's like, nobody went. Well, it's because it's basketball season now. They remembered that they were all basketball fans. You know what I mean? It's fun to poke fun at that, but also it's like, it's not pathetic because they won it. To Brian's point, I'm sure a lot of their fans are like, dude, I just got back from Miami. I'm not going to go drive back down to Bloomington in that cold weather. I get that completely. I'm with you.
We'll do 3 more. We'll do 4 more real quickly, including this super chat.
From Tyler Evans, appreciate you. What makes the Shanahan offense so quarterback friendly?
One, it believes in running the football. Number one. Whether you're talking about Mike Shanahan or Kyle Shanahan, it's running the football is taking some of that pressure off the quarterback, being physical, shortening the game, and just it's not all about the quarterback sitting in the pocket making 50 reads. There's complexity to it. It's not an easy offense, but the way that they run their pass game with play, when you run play action, there's naturally going to be fewer reads. And they run more of play action. They'll run more bootlegs, which limit reads. There's the emphasis on a run game forces teams to then game plan more for the run, which then allows you to put yourself in some better pass game opportunities because they can't focus all their time all week on finding every answer for every structure that you do. I think the way that they run the football, and this was true in the Broncos era as well under Mike Shanahan, is the way that they run the football with all the different motions and shifts and adjustments really can put you into some tough binds because you can't stretch yourself out as much to defend the pass against a team that is going to run the football at you. And so I think those are some of the reasons that make it friendly. And I just think it's the way it's taught. I don't think Mike Shanahan, and I think in turn Kyle Shanahan, from what I've heard, didn't feel the need to John Gruden an offense up. You know what I mean? Like, let me put more words in it so I can sound like I know what I'm talking about. Like John Gruden strikes me as the Dennis Leary character in Draft Day, where he just wants to impress you by saying all these words that make it sound like it doesn't need to be that complicated. You know what I mean? Like, if you're giving more than 11 instructions, you've got too much in it because you only have 11 players. You know what I mean? So I think that there's something to that too. And there's consistency to the things that they do. I think those are the things that make it quarterback friendly. But with the biggest being, you don't have to carry the team because they believe in running the football.
Yep. Byproduct of that too, there's also a common trend, and I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of Mike Shanahan-led offenses are also really strong in the trenches. Mm-hmm. You want to make something quarterback friendly and run game friendly, have a stellar offensive line.
Yep. All right, here's a quick one, Trev, from Nicholas Grosh. Will Pete Carroll go into the College and Pro Football Hall of Fame?
College, I would probably say yes. Pro Football Hall of Fame, I think he'll go into both, but I don't think he'll be like a first ballot for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And that's aside of like what happened with Bill Belichick. Like he had really good teams with Seattle. Obviously has a Super Bowl win with Seattle, but I don't know if like what he did in its entirety is enough to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I do think he'll go into both.
I would agree with both, deserving for both. The only reason that I have a little bit of hesitation about college is because of the way his tenure at USC ended and the allegations and the cheating scandals and things like that. That would be the only reason that maybe he doesn't.
Sure.
Yeah, but Pro Football Hall of Fame, I think he's like 16th all time in wins and has a Super Bowl. And he had 3 Super Bowl appearances? Correct? They won 1 and lost 2, didn't they? They beat the Broncos, lost to the Patriots. No, actually, he only made 2.
He only made 2 of them.
I'm thinking of the team with Mike Holmgren was the coach when they lost to the Steelers. I was thinking of that one as well, but that was Mike Holmgren. That would have been before Pete Carroll was there. So, looking at his record, they beat the Broncos in 13 and then lost to the Patriots. And then like they lost to the divisional game, Super Bowl champs, lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl, divisional game, wild card, divisional, wild card. Made the playoffs. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times in his career. So his record with the Seahawks, he had a win. He had over 600 win percentage with the Seahawks. That's pretty good. But his resume at USC warrants that of a Hall of Famer. No doubt. Even more so than the NFL. It's just the other drama. Will they ding him for that? That would be my only question.
Sure.
Also agree that even if he does make it in the NFL, it's not as a first. But he needs to not make it until Mike Shanahan's in. He needs to make it until, some other guys need to be in there before he does. Like, I think Mike Tomlin has a more worthy resume than Pete Carroll. Now he may, and their careers may be over at the same time. I think Mike Tomlin's more likely to coach again than Pete Carroll, but yeah.
Super chat from Packers Total Access. Appreciate you, Clayton. With Love and Price gone, which Notre Dame running back are you most excited about? Thanks for the great offseason content.
Thank you, Clayton. I would probably say Keidron Young because he's the greatest unknown. I mean, I kind of feel like we know what we're going to get from Aeneas, and it's exciting. And if Nolan James gets his chance, I think I know what he can bring to the table. Keidron is the one that I think could be a stud, but also is the big unknown because of the knee injury. So I think that creates a level. It's like unknown creates excitement, right? I mean,
yeah.
Are you more excited to go on your first date with a girl or your 50th date with a girl?
Oh, first.
Unless 50th is when you're going to propose, it's the first. It doesn't mean that, like, it's just different. You know what I mean? Like, your connection grows even more on date 5, 10, 15, and 20, right? Like, there's a deeper bond, a deeper connection. But that kind of that giddy excitement is just, it's different with the unknown part of it, That's at least how I feel about it. But so, and that's kind of how I feel about Keidron. It's like, oh, this could be exciting. Let's see. I don't know. It's going to be great. That's kind of how I feel about it. Where with Aeneas, I'm like, dude, he's going to ball out. Just get him the ball. Get him on the, you know what I mean? He'll be fine. Nolan James will be okay. You want to get somebody that can pound out some tough yardage, put Nolan James in the game. You know what I mean? Like, I think we have an idea of what the freshmen are capable of. But with Keidron coming off the knee injury and knowing what he could bring to the table, he's the one that I get most excited about.
Same for me as well. From Elmac, we probably lost 4 of our 5 best weapons on offense from last year: Love, Price, Raritan, and Fields. Do you think our offense probably regresses?
I don't know. I understand where you're coming from. And Trev, I'd love to hear your opinion on this when I'm done with this one as well. Here's the way I look at it. Teams evolve every year. They get better, they get worse. Sometimes they are kind of the same. And you sometimes will do that despite losing personnel. I mean, the Broncos, for example, won a Super Bowl in 1997. In that offseason, their Hall of Fame left tackle retired. And they were better the next year. Now, were they better because he retired? Or were they better because as a team, they got better? Maybe they weren't as good here, but they got better here, and here by adding this player, that player, the other player. Those are the things that you got to look at, and sometimes, no, they may not be as good in the boundary as what they were with Malachi Fields. They won't be as good at running back without Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, but they should be better at quarterback. They should be better on the offensive line. They should be better to the field at Z and X. They should be, you know what I mean? Like, they may not have as good of pass catching tight ends next year, but maybe they have better run blocking tight ends next year. So the team will be different, where you could look and say, boy, if I promise you at some point in time next season, somebody's going to say, could you imagine Malachi Fields playing in this offense? You know what I mean? Notre Dame in 2011 lost Harrison Smith, Robert Blanton, and I believe Darren Walls. He might have been done 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, he was already done. But they lost Robert Blanton, they lost Darius Fleming, and they lost Harrison Smith off the 2011 team. And they went out the next year and got better. They also lost Ethan Johnson, and they were better. Were they better because they didn't have Harrison Smith? Or were they better because Manti got better? Stephon Tuitt went into a sophomore year. He was way better. Lewis Nix got better. Like, they added, Sheldon Day. Like, they also lost Aaron Lynch off that 2011 defense. I forgot about him. Were they better because those guys were gone? No. It's just other guys got better. There was a greater understanding of the scheme. You're now in year 3 of Bob Diaco's defense. All those things kind of balance the personnel losses with this. And so those are things that I think factor into why I think they'll actually be better this year than they were last year.
Yeah. We had a similar conversation about this when we were doing our way too early top 25s. And it was very easy for me when I was looking at other teams to only focus on what they lost. And it's very easy for some Notre Dame fans to only focus on what other teams lost and what Notre Dame lost. But with that being said, you also have to look at what comes back. Because, yeah, you could say, well, 4 of your 5 best weapons on offense are gone. True. But then you could also look at it and say, but Jordan Faison comes back. You essentially, like, you could, depending on how you want to look at it, you could say you got Jaden Greathouse from the transfer portal. You know what I'm saying? It's like you played in 2 games, you get him back. You know, you bring in Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter. You bring in a very underrated, not by us, but nationally, a very underrated wide receiver class. Your tight end room from top to bottom, I think, got better because Cooper Flanagan is now healthy. Ty Washington's going into year 2 of the Mike Denbrock system. You have James Flanagan a year older. Then you bring in Ian Premer and Preston Frizel, and you still have Jack Larson. You bring back your left tackle. You bring back your right guard. You bring back your center. And at the 2 other spots, arguably, you're going to get more talented. I don't know if you're necessarily going to be better from the jump, but you get more talented. So, and then obviously CJ Carr is going to be a year improved. And he can have a full offseason where he's the guy. Think about that. Think about what he did as a redshirt freshman, and he didn't find out that he was going to be the guy until it was like 3 weeks before opening day. He knows he's the guy now. Like, I mean, that gets you excited. So, yeah, there's always losses. But I think it'll be the opposite. I think they're going to be better. Mike Denbrock goes into year 3. You know, you have more explosive weapons across the board on offense. Losing Love and Price stinks, but Aeneas Williams isn't he's not a slouch when it comes to hitting home run plays either. You know, so it's just going to look different. But I get where you're coming from here, LMAC, but rest assured.
It's a very fair question, right, Trev? I mean, it's a legitimate question to ask. How can you think this offense is going to be better when they lose this, and this? That's a very fair question.
But
absolutely. We've seen, I mean, 17 Oklahoma lost Baker Mayfield. I think, didn't they lose also CD Lamb off that team, or was CD on the team in 2018? So he was back. I know, but we talked about this. That 17 Oklahoma team was unbelievably good.
They lost Mark Andrews. I mean,
they lost Baker Mayfield. Marquise Brown was back. Mark Andrews was back. Let's look at their draft class. But, I mean, Baker and Mark Andrews is a big loss. That team scored 45 points per game. And again, they lost their quarterback who won the Heisman Trophy.
I think they also lost Orlando Brown, their left tackle.
Yeah. So I'm looking at their 2018 draft class. They lost, Baker Mayfield, Orlando Brown, Mark Andrews for sure, all 3 first or third round draft picks. And the next year they go out after scoring 45 points a game and going for 579 yards per game offensively. They go out the next year and they only drop 0.8 in yards per game. They went from 479 to 570, but they went from 8.3 yards per play to 8.6 and went from 45 points per game to 48. Why? Kyler Murray steps in and plays. Hollywood's a year older. CD's a year older. You know, this guy got better. So that happened. And that's not an uncommon story for well-coached teams. You lose this great player and the next guy's in, and it's not like Malachi Fields' replacement doesn't have to replace Malachi Fields. That might be Jaden Greathouse. That might be Jordan Faison. That, you know what I mean? Like that's where it is.
Oh yeah. And I get where you're coming from, LMAC. I made the same mistake with Ohio State's defense when I was evaluating them from 24 to 25. I was like, I have no idea about this coordinator hire. You're losing all these guys. I don't think they're going to be as good. And you could argue that they were better.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's a great question. Great question. There was a question from Andre Tonsel that I'm just not going to have time to get to. Andre, I know you're a board member. I would love for you to put that question about poverty teams on the board. I think it takes a lot different type of conversation and explanation that we just don't have time for today. There's a lot of other great questions that we just didn't have time to get to today. We'll be back on Monday, and we will have our BISA hold on Monday. We'll have a BISA hold on Monday. No matter what, we'll have a BISA hold on Monday. And I'm looking forward to that very, very much. But Trev, why don't you go and take us out of here, my man?
Yeah, another fun Friday free-for-all mailbag, folks. Have a fun and safe weekend. On your way out of here, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. We talked about it during the show, but also make sure you are a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. I know we talk about it at the end of the show and in between segments, but it really is the best way to stay in tune with things that are happening. We post our stories on there. We put the news up first on the message boards. Brian has film breakdowns on there. We get a lot of good questions about route trees and run blocking scheme. A lot of those breakdowns are already on the message board. So please make sure you sign up for that. But we will be back on Monday for the buy sell hold. Get those submissions in on the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Have a fun and safe weekend. Until Monday, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.